In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort.
This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to episode 143 of The Horror of Babylon, where we review...
Holes.
The movie or the book?
Yes.
I've never read the book. I've only seen the movie and I haven't seen it since middle school. So this is going to be a short discussion.
I'm 12. I'm still stuck on Holes.
I mean, nothing against it. I just haven't watched it. So does it make your top 5 Shia LaBeouf?
Weirdly, the movie's actually one of the closest adaptations of a book I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. It's actually very good.
Okay.
We're reviewing The Hobbit.
I'm Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel.
At your service.
Yeah. And Hef's here too.
How y'all doing? Good to be here.
Yeah. And it's also good to say thank you to our patrons, the Horror of Babylon and Company, or Abigail Oakenshield and Company. Yeah, Abigail Oakenshield and Company. That's it. That's what it is, because she's the first. Okay, thank you to Abigail, the first, breaker of chains, mother of dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron,
and Ben, the fourth, patron of hope, and Mia the fifth, the Rainmaker.
She makes it rain, yo.
Oh, she makes it rain. And thank you to Sierra the sixth, the Keyblade patron. And thank you to Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mall at Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or by the river in the village of Bywater, where Ron is just setting up a new shop. He applied for a license to open a shop in the Shire itself, but unfortunately, when they asked him if he was going to serve mead and ale, he said no, and they rejected his application. So he has to set up his new shop in Bywater, but, that's all right. All right, so you can also visit them online at horsemen.tcgplayerpro.com. If you make it in the store, say hello to Ronald III, Krampus of Christmas. Upcoming thing coming up this Friday, which we are recording this on a day, but this coming Friday, October 4th, Daniel and I are going to do a live episode right after we watch the new Salem's Lot, which is finally coming to HBO Max next week.
I still don't believe it till the credits roll.
Yeah, have you seen Beetlejuice yet?
Nope.
No, yeah, it doesn't exist.
I'm waiting to go see it with you.
Oh, well, we'll have to pick a night for that, because I want to see it. Nobody else here wants to see it. But we're going to be streaming a live episode next Friday night. We're going to watch it, and then we're just going to stream and talk about it. And, if you are around and you've seen it and you want to jump in the chat, this is your chance to be part of a episode of The Horror of Babylon and get your thoughts heard or seen. Not heard. Not literally. Okay, trigger warning. Tolkien. If you don't like Tolkien, or if you don't like me, this is probably not the episode for you. Any other triggers?
Short people.
Are there...
Ryan's fighting a spider. He's having a time.
It was a gnat.
Well, that was a spider.
I shall call you Sting.
Ding!
Oh, spiders.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Some people
Yeah.
really hate spiders.
No, that's a real one. If you don't like
Yeah.
spiders, then this is not a good one for you. Granted, it's just like one chapter, but still.
Claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Where they're stuck in the barrels.
Oh yeah, I did 4 MRIs in the past month, so I did them all in one day.
He
So-
just pretended he was in the barrel. and that's
No,
how he
actually, I
saved himself.
pretended I was in an alien movie.
You do everything 100%, so I have no problem believing that.
Yeah. The fourth one, it took like way longer than it was supposed to because they had to keep banging on it to wake me up because I kept falling asleep in it.
I have never been able. I envy people that can just like go to sleep anywhere and basically at any point.
I had that ER visit was 18 hours long, so it wasn't voluntary falling asleep.
Okay.
Okay, so our history with The Hobbit and just kind of Tolkien in general. Daniel, why don't you kick us off?
When I was in junior high, I tried to read Lord of the Rings, and I sat it down and said, "This is stupid." And then I watched the movies, and then I watched the movies again with Ryan at some point, and then
We marathoned them before the Hobbit movies came out.
and then we went and saw the Hobbit movies.
And you finished the movies. You got through them all.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The movies I didn't mind so much. When I tried because when I was in junior high, I was a lot even dumber than I am now, and those books can be very like information dense. And I was sitting there trying to and he's describing like the history of a city, and I'm like, I don't care. Where's the sword fighting?
Whereas
In the
sword
movies.
fighting.
Yeah, and my taste has evolved over time, and then Ryan said, "Hey, I really want to do The Hobbit at some point," and I was like, "Oh yeah, we should do The Hobbit at some point." And then The Hobbit anniversary was coming up, and Ryan's like, "Let's do it now."
Yeah, we were intending to release this on Hobbit Day, which is September 22nd, which is both Frodo and Bilbo's birthday. But we had to delay it due to sickness, which is fine.
Oops.
It's okay. It's not a big deal.
Hef was cursed.
Cursed.
Oh my god. It was
We
so...
had to take him to an elvish village,
He had a Morgul wound.
as opposed to an immortal wound.
That Friday was so bad.
Morgul.
That Friday was so bad. Like, so if I felt like somebody beat me with a sack of oranges, it was so bad.
Bing Crosby just came into
He
your
did.
house.
That's what that's the closest equivalent. It wasn't like hurt. It was more just like real ragged, I guess, if that makes,
Yeah, it does.
It was rough.
Yeah, I've had the flu. You're like achy and just like you're drained and you just like, it's not like, you're in pain. You're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I have for
It
my
was-
history.
It
So.
was kind of like 1 hour of Daniel's lovemaking is what I imagine it to be close to.
What did you do with the other 59 minutes?
Just be in pain.
You tantric son of a bitch. The only way I can go for 2 hours is if you take a 90-minute break in between.
I've made jokes before that like if ever my wife and I separate or she dies, I've told her, I said, when I start dating, and again, the first thing I will tell the woman as soon as I start dating, I was like, listen, there's 2 things you really need to know about me. Number 1, I watch Yu-Gi-Oh all the way through at least once a year. Number 2,
You won't get to number 2.
Yeah, number 2, assuming she stays past the first one. So number 2, the first time we have sex, I will come immediately.
Can I make you a Tinder profile as a joke just to see if we get hits?
I kind of.
Using just those descriptions.
I'm kind of for that, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, but let me tell you something. After that first 30 minutes, within the first 5 seconds that I let go, we're gonna have a good time.
What's your history with The Hobbit and Tolkien?
Wet sandy holes. In truth, I don't have a lot of background on Tolkien. Tolkien was much similar to Daniel. Like, I tried it when I was younger, and then I think the books were just a little bit over my threshold of reading at the time. And then from there, I saw the movies. I love the films, which I know for some people is kind of a contentious topic between, liking the films versus liking the books. But, so I gave it, whenever y'all were talking about this one, I gave it a try again. Obviously, older mindset, a lot better to settle in. and we're here, and I'm excited to talk.
This is probably the, like, aside from the original Star Wars movies, this is probably like my favorite thing, period. It even probably more so than the original Star Wars trilogy, it's the most nostalgic thing for me. My dad read this book to my brother and I multiple times as kids. He read it to me as an infant. I have the very copy right here that he read to us. And it was the first book that I ever read to Emma when she was a baby. I still remember her crying when I did the Gollum voice and Beck screaming from the other room, "Stop fucking doing that!"
You have to do the voice.
Hi.
Brownies.
I'm good, thank you. Would you guys like brownies?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Frosting or sprinkles on them.
Yeah.
Oh,
Whipped cream.
If I'm breaking my diet, I'm breaking it all the way. Yeah.
With the exception of pineapple, just assume yes to everything.
So sprinkles, frosting, and whipped cream.
I mean, that sounds wonderful.
We're basically hobbits now.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes, thanks so much.
Is Drake being good?
I'm watching my movie and he's doing something on the iPad.
Okay.
He's not doing anything.
Okay.
He's like this with a
Okay.
blanket.
It's my spirit animal.
So I actually was into the books before the movies, but we tried to read The Lord of the Rings, or my dad tried to read The Lord of the Rings to us when we were kids, and it was too much. Like, it just kind of went in one ear and went out the other.
It's information dense.
Yeah. So I didn't get into The Lord of the Rings until the movies came out, and I remember sitting in the theater in Weston, West Virginia, right on premiere day for the Fellowship of the Ring, and I loved it. It was the best thing that ever happened. But the biggest reaction I remember is just like screaming, "Gollum's in the Lord of the Rings!" So I didn't know.
My reaction was because we also, not the opening night or anything, but we went to see it, and I was not aware that it was a trilogy. So when we went to see it, like I as a very young child sat through a 3-hour movie and watched them walk off and fade to black, and I went to my mother, I was like, "Mom, what the hell?" Then she was like, "Don't you say that." But because I didn't know that was just like, that's the end of the movie. That was like the first movie they ever did that to me.
Yeah, there was a guy in our theater, and I still remember yelling, "That's only half the damn movie." But yeah, I went on, and when they announced the Hobbit movies, I started rereading The Hobbit, and then after that I read The Lord of the Rings, and then I read the Silmarillion, and then I read all the other Middle-earth books, and then I started getting into Middle-earth lore videos on YouTube, and it really spiraled. And The Hobbit itself, I could never ever tell you how many times I've read / have it read to me, because I have no idea how many times my dad read it to us, but I have personally read it physically with a book or listened to the audiobook at least 6 times. So this is the book I've read the most. This is the most nostalgic for me story there is for me, kind of, period.
Who's your favorite narrator?
Andy Serkis is just...
That's the free one.
Do you hear that, Ryan's dad?
Oh.
You've been replaced.
He said all the dwarves' names wrong.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Was it Thoreen?
I don't remember.
As soon as I
That's
heard
great.
you talking about your dad reading you the books, I'm like, I have the opportunity for something. I need to wait.
Oh, that was... Well, when we get to that, I'll bring that up, because I didn't know Andy Serkis was the one who read the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a good story about when we get to Gollum.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
All right, so let's jump in the background. I wrote a lot. I'll try to try to run through it.
You do whatever feels right, and we will jump in where needed.
We're just a part of the journey.
Okay, part of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, The Hobbit was written by j.r.r. Tolkien, his full name being John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, who was born on my son's birthday, January 3rd, in 1892 in South Africa, which...
And you didn't name him Tolkien?
He tried.
I barely got away with his middle name being Lucas.
I know. I'm sorry.
Oh, funny story. So, my son's first name is Drake, and my son's middle name is Lucas. And the first time I talked to Hef after he was born, he's like, "Oh, so what's your name?" I said, "Oh, Drake Lucas." He's like, "Oh, you obviously got Drake from Uncharted, but where does Lucas come from?" And I've never face palmed so hard in my entire life.
Wow.
Sorry, Hef.
It's fine. I also told my daughter that she had a big day. So I mean, we're not full of proud moments here.
Yeah.
I'm just probably doing my best to not have children at this point, so I don't get stuck with these stories.
He's born in the British colony in South Africa. He died in England on September 2nd, 1973. So Emma saw something on Instagram that I had never noticed or heard, and she pointed out to me. So he died in 1973. So there was one ring to rule them all. How many rings were given to the race of men?
9.
How many were given to the dwarves?
7.
And how many were given to the elves?
Oh, 2. 3.
3.
Oh my God, I hate you.
And who gave you this fact?
I said you did.
Oh.
I hope you edit this so that she just slides in out of nowhere. Thank you, Emma. This is wonderful.
They're the same size. One just fell apart.
You hear that?
Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Tolkien was a World War I veteran. He spent 4 months at the front as a communications officer, and he participated in the Battle of the Somme, which is one of the bloodiest and worst battles of World War I. Thankfully, he was only out there for 4 months. He got sick, like gravely sick, and was recalled, and actually spent like 2 years in recovery from this like really bad flu or cold that he got.
Boy, I wonder why he didn't like writing about war all that much.
Yeah. During his time in the service, he began writing what he called at the time the Book of Lost Tales, but would eventually become the Silmarillion. And the first story within the Silmarillion that he wrote was The Fall of Gondolin. Gondolin, which is referenced at least 2 or 3 times in The Hobbit, but we'll talk more about that later. And here's a picture of him in his uniform. Biscuits. He's kind of a good-looking guy.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I'd have his children.
Yeah, for sure. After that, he became a professor. He was a scholar of Old English, Anglo-Saxon languages, of course, English, Germanic languages, Norse mythology, Arthurian legends, Beowulf. Before The Hobbit, probably his best-known work was his own translation of Sir Gawain Gawain and the Green Knight. He worked at the University of Leeds, University of Oxford, and he retired in 1959 after publishing The Lord of the Rings. He was a close friend of C.S. Lewis, who is the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, and he and C.S. Lewis, with a few other authors, were a member of the Inklings, which was a literary discussion group made up of Tolkien, Lewis, and their friends.
I just imagine he calling up Lewis some days and be like, "Hey, how's it feel to blatantly put Christian themes into our books? It's pretty great."
Lewis is even more so.
Yeah, no, even more so.
Yeah. Jesus line.
I've met people who deny that from Lewis, let alone deny it from Tolkien, let alone Lewis.
I mean, you can maybe have a discussion about Tolkien.
Yeah, but Lewis.
Come on. Yeah, whatever. Fucking crucify that lion. Aslan. Most of his works have been published by his son Christopher Tolkien after his death. We'll talk. So basically, his life's work was the Silmarillion. which he began writing during the war and worked on for decades after. He attempted to have it published in the 30s, but he could never get a publisher to accept it. And eventually what he ended up getting published was a story that was related to the Silmarillion, but was intended for children. It was actually started as a story that he told to his children as a goodnight story, and that was The Hobbit. And then after The Hobbit, he was like, okay, now that I've got a book out there and I'm established, now I can find a publisher for the Silmarillion. But they said, no, we want a sequel to The Hobbit, and that became The Lord of the Rings. He probably could have gotten the Silmarillion published after The Lord of the Rings. However, he was a constant revisionist, and after having The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings published, he could never get the Silmarillion to a place where he was happy with it. His son Christopher Tolkien published it in 1977, 4 years after his death. And the printed version of the Silmarillion that we have today is written by j.r.r. Tolkien and edited by Christopher Tolkien. So,
Thick.
So you're starting to... So is that your ideology there, Daniel? Is you're going to be a Tolkien? You're going to retire, then give your book out?
I don't think I'm ever going to let anyone read anything I write.
Why?
I'll send you an excerpt.
God of War fanfics.
God of War fanfics. I mean...
Well, I'm trying to write the original idea for God of War that they abandoned after the original creator left the creative team, which was at the end, Kratos was supposed to become one of the 3 wise men that found Jesus. That's an actual plot point that he wanted to make in the games.
Okay, then.
Yeah. So that's my fan fiction, is trying to restore that.
So talking about The Hobbit itself, the title of the book is The Hobbit, or There and Back Again, but it's more commonly referred to as The Hobbit. Is a children's fantasy novel written by j.r.r. Tolkien and published on September 21st, 1937. Highly acclaimed book, recognized as one of the best children's literature books, one of the best fantasy novels ever written. Here's a quote from Tolkien's BFF, C.S. Lewis. "The truth is that the book is a number of good things, never before united, have come together. A fund of humor, an understanding of children, and a happy fusion of the scholars with the poet's grasp of mythology. The professor has the air of inventing nothing. He has studied trolls and dragons at first hand and describes them with that fidelity that is worth oceans of glib originality." The original edition of The Hobbit was illustrated with black and white drawings.
Which are amazing.
And they were drawn by Tolkien himself, including the maps. Allen and Unwin, who was the publishers, decided to do color illustrations with the second printing. They did a second printing that same year in 1937. It was so popular. However, due to World War II, there was a paper shortage, and the two printings of the first edition were very limited, so there aren't a lot of those out there. Or the ramp up to World War II, rather. And just a fun note, as I mentioned, after he died, his son Christopher Tolkien kind of took on going through all of his writings and publishing various things after he died, including starting with the Silmarillion and then going on with the History of Middle-earth series, Beren and Luthien, The Fall of Gondolin, The Children of Hurin, published way more after he died than when he was alive. But he actually Christopher Tolkien started his career as his father's editor as a kid. Just after he published The Hobbit, he hired his son Christopher for 2 pence per publication to be his editor. So it's like paying his kid pennies to reread his stuff.
I didn't know he was also frugal on top of everything else.
Yeah. We'll skip the revisions.
Here's some candy money, son. Read a book.
We might talk about the revisions later in the episode, so we'll leave that. So let's just go over the adaptations, and then we'll move on to structure and themes. Okay, so for adaptations, there are a lot. So there was a BBC radio drama in 1968 The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings have been mentioned in lots of music over the years, from Led Zeppelin to Enya, but the one I want to shout out is Leonard Nimoy's song, The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. Have you guys
Leonard
heard?
Nimoy
Bilbo Baggins. All right, we're just going to watch like 30 seconds of it. We're not watching the whole thing.
He says that.
No, because I have never heard it. It's...
Leonard Nimoy singing is also something
He's
that's going to be
better-
very unique to my ears.
He's better than William Shatner.
Okay, I mean, like...
Yeah, what does that really mean?
Is there a lot of pausing? Oh my god. I just saw the pose.
Bilbo!
Okay, you can check out the rest of that on your own.
I mean, what was the reason for any of that?
Entertainment.
He loves The Hobbit.
It's great. I listen to it all the time. There have been three English audiobook adaptations of The Hobbit. The first was released in 1974. It was abridged and it was read by Nicole Williamson. It's no longer available. The second was 1990, read by Robert Inglis. It was unabridged, and Robert also recorded the full Lord of the Rings trilogy as well. And then in 2020, Andy Serkis took on a live stream where he would read The Hobbit from cover to cover for charity. I forget what the charity was, but I actually did watch it live, or not the entire thing, but like a couple hours of it live back in 2020 and donated money to it. And it was such a hit that I don't know who like came to him, but I guess the people who had like the audiobook rights came to him and was like, hey, why don't you just actually record an audiobook for The Hobbit? And then that was published in 2020, and then he went on to do audiobook recordings of The Lord of the Rings as well.
That seems like a really good segue to my story. So I did not know when I was listening to this that Andy Serkis was the one who read it. Like, if you go on Audible and you have a membership, it's free with your membership, I believe. And that was one I got. I didn't look that it was him. I'm driving. We get to the Gollum scene, right? I'm pretty into it. I'm listening to, like, I'm liking this dude's voice. Like, I was really enjoying that. Like, I was like, I don't know who this dude is, but he's got a real good Gandalf with it too, because it sounded like Ian McKellen. Like, he's very good at mimicry.
He impersonates a lot of the actors from the movies.
I noticed that, and I was just like, man, this guy's really good, or like that. And then he gets to the Gollum scene, and the volume in my car was amplified infinitely whenever he started doing the voice, to the point where I drove off the road and into a ditch because I wasn't actually prepared to have that much Gollum at me at once. Have my wife come get me and get a tow truck to get me out.
My story's a little different.
I didn't wreck a car.
I sometimes give Ben, one of our patrons, a ride to work because we work together. And I was listening to it, and he's like, what do you listen to? I'm like, The Hobbit. He's like, man, who's reading this? I go, Andy Serkis, the Black Panther guy. And he goes,
Ulysses Claw.
And he's like, and Gollum. I'm like, I don't know who that is. He's like, he's in the book. I'm like, I haven't gotten there yet. That's a spoiler.
I'm listening to The Hobbit as read by Supreme Leader Snoke. I'm listening to The Hobbit as read by Caesar from Planet of the Apes.
I did start doing that. I would just reference any other character.
That's so funny.
I have a similar thing I do with a guy at work like that whenever he brings up sports to me, because like he thinks that I know way less about sports than what I do. So like I tell him that the Detroit Red Hawks are my favorite hockey team. Those don't exist.
There is a Red Wing. Like I know there's a hockey jersey with like a red wing.
They're called the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right.
All right.
No, my favorite one is whenever he told me to watch a football game because he had money on it, and then he said, "Okay, just keep an eye on things." And then randomly he asked me, "Okay, Hef, how you doing?" I said, "They're on the left 20." He said, what? She's like, they're on the left 20. He's like, are they offense or defense? And I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means. And he was just like, where's the ball going? And I'm just like, oh, it's going, to the right. And he said, so they're on the 20. I said, yeah, that's what I said, Cole.
On the left 20.
Duh.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so let's keep going.
Yeah.
For video games, there's one straight video game adaptation of The Hobbit. It was released in 2003 on PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and Windows.
It'll be our next stream.
Yeah, I have it. I had it on GameCube as a kid. I still have my copy of it. It's a great game. It's a hack and slash, but it's a really fun hack and slash. There is a graphic novel adaptation written by David T. Wenzel. I think the graphic novel, the audio drama, and the play, because there is a dramatic play written in 1968 that you can buy the rights for. Those are the ones I haven't experienced. In terms of film and TV, the first film adaptation of The Hobbit was from 1967, and it was made by Gene Deitch of Rembrandt Films. I was somehow not aware of this until today, and Daniel and I watched it for a pre-show. So if you are curious on my reactions to that, then you can check out a Patreon description or Patreon subscription. You can even do a free trial and check out that video.
I think the free trial is just worth it to hear what Ryan goes through.
But basically, like, this Gene guy, I don't remember how he got the film rights to The Hobbit, but somehow he had the film rights to The Hobbit. He had to produce a film in order to keep the rights. He produced this 12-minute animated piece of shite and then sold the rights back to the Tolkien estate for $900,000.
And what he would do is, because he had to have proof that people watched the movie, is he would give them a quarter, say, hey, go watch this movie, sign a thing saying he paid for everyone's movie tickets that saw it. And all they had to do was sign that they watched the movie.
I feel like he owes me a quarter.
and then he got like $1 bajillion in back then money. So...
the first real film adaptation of The Hobbit was Rankin and Bass's 1977 animated film. This movie,
Love it.
It is my favorite non-Star Wars movie, period. This is the other half of the origin story of my Hobbit obsession. My brother and I had this on VHS, and we watched the absolute shit out of it. I still watch it to this day. It's my the soundtrack to it. All the songs are like probably my favorite movie soundtrack, period. It's my going to sleep music when I need something to take my mind off of stuff. It's the music that I put on. It aired on NBC on November 27th, and Rankin and Bass, you may not recognize the name, but I've promised everyone here has seen they did all of the stop animation Christmas specials like Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, all of those.
Have you seen The Return of the King?
Many times.
Okay.
Many times.
I should have assumed, but I had to make sure.
Yeah, I've got The Return of the King.
Yeah!
Okay. And we'll talk, when and if we cover The Lord of the Rings, we'll talk more about that. There's a live action television dramatization done by the Soviet Union that broadcasted on television in 1985.
People really like to do their own fan dubs for it.
Yeah, it's available on YouTube. It is atrocious. In 1993, in Finland, there was a TV miniseries adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, the first episode of which is an adaptation of The Hobbit. It is also atrocious. I'm sorry to all these people, but it was painful to watch. It was so bad. And then, of course, there's the Peter Jackson Shelley.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
Let's let somebody else talk. Let's jump into structure and themes. We're going to start off talking about the structure, and I want to get Hef and Daniel, I want to get your thoughts on the structure of the book. 30 minutes in. Somebody else can
30
talk.
minutes in. I mean, structure was very straightforward. There wasn't a lot to go off of. This was aside from Eyes of the Dragon, this was my first, I would say, pure fantasy novel that I have read. And I'm happy to say that, what I remember of not being really big fan of fantasy books does not seem to apply to a lot of my adult life. Because in reading this, I really enjoyed what I read. It was... The language in it is not as overbearing as I figured it would be. Everything's kind of woven together really pretty simplistically.
Yeah.
And you're just... Calling it a children's book seems kind of offensive. In a sense. I think we had this discussion whenever we were talking about, Eyes of the Dragon, where, technically you could call it a children's book, but, it had more adult themes. This one doesn't really have adult themes, but I think the way it's written, it's not really written like a children's book to me.
I think it does have adult themes, but I think it was written and intended to be for children, and it is more typical of a children's novel for the time. The big book, when it was published, the big book that it was compared to was Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, and Alice in Wonderland is a trip,
mm-hmm.
and also has some pretty difficult language. If you took your average 10-year-old from 2024 and your average 10-year-old from 1937, like a general educated kid, and gave them a copy of Alice in Wonderland and the Hobbit, probably your average American kid modern times would struggle badly with both of them.
There's no WAP in this.
But there's no TV back then.
Yeah.
Nobody's mind had been warped yet. So
there's no TikToks.
Yeah, there was a much higher standard for what was considered a children's novel.
I really hate crapping on modern media. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, I don't, but I've gotten kind of sick of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen the trailer for the freaking Minecraft movie?
No.
Okay, don't.
The world has, and they're not happy about it. That's what I know.
And actually, I got this comparison because I was reading The Hobbit when the trailer dropped. And one of the big defenses, mostly by Hollywood shills, or people who have a skin in the game, was this movie isn't made for you. It's made for the kids. And the go-to response by the back and forth is, yeah, kids deserve good movies. Kids can also have something that's good, and people would bring up The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or even The Lion King, where you had these movies where there were themes of betrayal and death, and there's some heavy themes in them, but nowadays they always seem to pussyfoot around it, and the excuse is, well, it's for children. And I think the same thing kind of applies to literature. More so for Alice in Wonderland compared to The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of things, I don't want to say dumbed down, but a lot of the edges have been shaved off over the years.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But this book was it was refreshing, because it was something really very new that I hadn't really experienced. And like I said, Eyes of the Dragon was the closest thing. But this was it was simple. I'm not trying to not to dumb it down, because I know there's people out there that are they're so sunk in the lore. But that's kind of what makes this book really nice to read, because not only is it to me it's a decent gateway, it's a more than decent gateway, but it gives you all these kind of hints throughout the book, because they were making references to things that I didn't understand. But you didn't need to understand them. You were just hey, that sounds like something extra that would be cool to learn about.
It makes the world feel lived in.
The world building isn't really... It's in the book.
Yeah.
But it's more extra that you have to find out for yourself. And I think that's kind of interesting.
Because, when a character makes a... if we started talking about the Washington Monument, we all know what that is. But... a character in a book mentioned something.
Is that where they shot Lincoln?
It's about to be where they shot Hef.
But when a character mentions something in a book, sometimes, especially in a lot of modern novels, there's this need for exposition, where they then start going into the history right then. And that kind of breaks the flow of the narrative. Where in The Hobbit, they'll reference, oh yeah, this is where that thing is. Well, of course they know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
and that just makes the world feel a little bit more organic.
I like his description of the creatures, like all
Yeah.
the elves and like the various like fairies and things, because like they feel like I don't want to say it like that. It kind of like pokes at you a bit. There's just like it tells you what they are and gives you like little tiny inklets into what it is.
Enough.
But at the same time, it always kind of like the book kind of makes you feel like I should know what that is. I should know about that. Like, you just, I don't know. It has this thing of like pulling you in, of like feeling like you're supposed to know more than what you do, which makes you seek out more, which I think is interesting.
He's really good about like stoking your imagination. And like, you know, with most books, when you read, you kind of have your picture in your head. But Tolkien, like, he kind of gives you like the kindling, and he ignites the fire, but it's like he lets your imagination like make that fire like roar.
This book makes a lot of sense as to why people say that this book is an inspiration. The biggest reason, I think, is because, and this is like my overall thing of the structure for the book, or just this book overall, was that this book is... kindling's a very good word, because I think it's a book that, like, by itself, it's very simple. It's very simplistic. It follows a very strict, very straight line narrative. But the things that are woven in between it are what feed your imagination to be able to do something different with it. Like, this book feels a lot like he wrote it, and then, like, as he was writing it, he was just like, perhaps I could inspire people to also write about these things, about like these, like he had a lot of lore that he just like kind of randomly spit out that other people have come later and just kind of run with in their own like fantasy series and whatnot, and I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, he's commonly known as the father of modern fantasy.
Thank you for Dungeons and Dragons, Tolkien.
Yeah, like the genre of fantasy obviously existed before him. We just mentioned Alice in Wonderland, and The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Frank L. Baum. Like there were fantasy novels before Tolkien, but like there were novels before Tolkien, and then there are novels after Tolkien. Like he's a turning point in the fantasy genre, particularly high fantasy. You have
Your turn.
Any structure?
Oh, I mean, I was just interjecting as he was going. I agree. Structure-wise, it's a nice, straightforward story. I like that it's like somebody's telling me a story, too.
Yeah, what about the narrator? I was going to ask you guys about the narrator.
Yeah, I like that.
It was more subtle than what the Eyes of the Dragon was, because the Eyes of the Dragon like kind of interjected the narrator a lot of times. This one like didn't do it as much.
The biggest example was when he stopped to tell me what a hobbit was.
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose I should tell you what a hobbit is. I'm like, yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the one creature in the book that you wouldn't find in other pieces.
Yeah.
It's like his original. There are other ones, but it's like the main original Tolkien creature.
Yeah. That's like the big break. But otherwise, he mostly sticks to the story.
Mm-hmm.
But I
that being said, I do like that. Like I like books like this every now and then. My fantasy things have always been. I think I like being told my fantasy rather than having to try to imagine my fantasy.
You want your dad to read you a bedtime story.
That says a lot about me.
Yeah.
Do you guys know who the narrator is?
Of what? Well, the book itself?
Of The Hobbit, yeah.
I assumed it was Sauron.
I didn't even think about that. If I had to guess, is it Bilbo?
Mm-hmm.
Aha!
He writes his memoirs.
He writes his memoirs.
That comes full circle. That makes sense.
So
that's cool.
The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion have like one of the most complicated and deep frame narratives that exists in literature. And when and if we do cover the Lord of the Rings, we'll go more into it. But like the top level explanation of the frame narrative, and like if you read The Hobbit and then you read the Lord of the Rings, the structures are very different because the Hobbit has they're both third person omniscient, but the Hobbit has an explicit narrator and The Lord of the Rings doesn't. The Hobbit was written intended for children, and The Lord of the Rings was intended for adults, and the tone is much darker, and the language is even more descriptive and more complicated. So it feels like two different people, and that's because canonically within the world of Middle Earth, they were written by two different people. The Hobbit was written by Bilbo Baggins at the end of his adventures as his memoirs, and then when he passed on his memoirs to Frodo, who then added to them what would become The Lord of the Rings as one book. And then kind of the frame narrative that Tolkien came up with is that, okay, so Bilbo wrote down about his adventures, and then when Frodo got back from Mordor, he took that same book and he added his own adventures, and then when Frodo went off to Valinor, he gave it to Sam, and Sam added some notes and some things here and there, and then Aragorn said, hey, Bilbo and Frodo wrote down all this stuff. Well, the lore keepers of Gondor, we need a copy of that for our lore libraries. So Sam gave it to Merry and Pippin, who took it to Gondor, and on the way they added their own notes, and then the lore keepers of Gondor, they added their own notes, and it was passed down through the generations in Gondor, and eventually the world of Middle-earth would become the modern world, and in some deep, dusty, crusty library, an English professor by the name of j.r.r. Tolkien found this book and translated it into modern English. And if you look at any copy of The Hobbit, or The Lord of the Rings, or The Silmarillion, they all have it. On the title pages, there are these, like, kind of fantasy-looking Old English letters. And what these say, in The Hobbit, it says, The Hobbit, or There and Back Again, being a record of a year's journey made by Bilbo Baggins of Hobbiton, compiled from his memoirs by j.r.r. Tolkien, and published by George Allen and Unwin Limited. So it wasn't, he's telling you on the very first page, I didn't write this. I compiled, I found it.
It's canon now.
And in doing this, he's establishing a real world mythos, what would become known as a legendarium. A legendarium is a fictional mythology. It's a literary collection of legends. Because part of what he wanted to do is he wanted to create a mythology for England, which really, you know, aside from the Arthurian legends, didn't really have its own mythology. So that's kind of the frame narrative of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings in a nutshell.
That's wild. That's really cool. Also, could you imagine being the first person that was like, I wonder what that says, and then they looked up and just shit themselves?
It's real.
You know, there's at least one person out there who's still looking for old Hobbiton.
It's like that one person who, like, opens up the Bible and they were just like, wait, I think there's a page missing here, and then it's like, to my darling Candy, all characters in this book are fictitious, and it's just like...
It also gives an easy explanation for any inconsistencies between the books.
That's hilarious.
Also, different revisions. So in the original published version of The Hobbit, Bilbo did not pick up the ring in Gollum's cave. He did the riddle game and won it from Gollum. And that, if you may have noticed, that's what he tells the dwarves what happened. But in the second edition of The Hobbit, Tolkien changes it so that he picked up the ring in Gollum's cave, but he didn't change the parts of the book where Bilbo explains that he won it from Gollum, and he just used it saying, okay, well, Bilbo's the one writing this, so Bilbo was just lying.
He's a little liar. But
he also slight spoiler, he makes Bilbo tell the truth in The Lord of the Rings, which is what happens. So he can use, like, inconsistencies in his writing, and the frame narrative to explain inconsistencies in his writing among all the vast things.
Mary
I like
and
the
Poppins
idea.
were all like,
I like the idea that like his canon is like can be just yeah, it happened maybe.
Yeah, I found it.
Yeah, I found it.
It's in the book. The book itself is called the Red Book of Westmarch, and that's the book that contains The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and the Tales of the Silmarillion. Bilbo added to it during his time in Rivendell, between The Hobbit and during the Lord of the Rings. Never mind. Okay.
I like that. Real quick, I like that we have the Hobbit tale, we have the Lord of the Rings tale. Aragorn requests books. Mm-hmm. We have Merry and Pippin's tale, which I can only summarize as to what I imagine to be. There's so much fucking more weed than I thought there would be.
That's what it was. So, at the end of The Lord of the Rings, there's a huge appendix that goes into, like, the history, all the kings, the dynasties, like geography, calendars, languages. The part that Mary added was about the tobacco and the weed that they grew in the Shire. It was a herb lore.
Herb lore.
They don't have anything about dank ass weed in this.
Edited by Snoop Dogg.
Okay, all right, we gotta keep going. Daniel, the hero's quest.
Love it. Love everything about it. I was telling Ryan this whenever we were talking about it last week, that I've been going through a little bit of a fantasy kick right now, so it was like the perfect time to read The Hobbit. And I also told him that how we had this discussion where sometimes, you know, what stage in your life you read something matters. And usually it makes, like on this podcast, it usually makes us enjoy something less because we've already experienced a different version of it. And then when we try to go back, for me this was the opposite, where this is the almost perfect stage of my life to read this book because I have a higher appreciation for certain things, because I've grown to really like reading mythologies. I read a lot of Norse myths like the Poetas and Greek myths. I just got through Beowulf not too long ago, so it was neat to see that on here.
It was a big influence on Tolkien.
And you can see that. So I've been going through a bunch of that stuff, and I also really like the hero's journey, but not just what the hero's journey is, but how people have adapted it and molded it and how it's kind of changed over time. Because of my hyper focuses, I used Dark Souls as an example, where the game isn't just about, you know, dodge rolling. It's a game that's a story about mythologies. It's about world creation and world myth, and how people in such worlds react to the gods around them. And so when I'm reading The Hobbit, I'm like, oh, Gandalf, he's Odin. That's cool. Bilbo, he's going on the hero's journey. That means he's going to not only go through these trials and tribulations, but he's going to come into contact with these old and ancient things that are so much greater than him, a Smaug. And the choices he makes are going to shape the destinies of other people, and that's cool to like learn and read about. And again, I use Dark Souls as an example because that's I'm currently playing through all the games because I'm on a fantasy kick, and I'm like, well, I have these guys go through, and I'll do some dodge rolling, and I'll read all the item descriptions, and I'll experience the hero's journey, and then I'll set myself on fire. Yeah.
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 What did you guys think of the episodic nature of the chapters?
I needed that so badly.
It's very helpful. It
was like a daily quest. I could like have my day, like I'd take a chapter a day, and I was just like, hey, accomplishment.
Yeah, they're nice little bookmarks. It's pretty much perfect places to stop and go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any criticisms for that. I think that if someone tried to do that these days, we'd probably get, like, at the beginning of each chapter, like last time on Dragon Ball Z.
I don't think people write books like that anymore.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah.
I feel like the modern equivalent would be like an episodic TV show.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much recapping.
Yeah.
And you don't really need it with this, so.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, we were going to talk about it being a children's novel, but we already kind of talked about that. So another big structural thing is MacGuffins. What is the MacGuffin of this book?
Yes.
I don't know what a MacGuffin is. If you don't know, MacGuffin is like a literary or a film term for an item or person that everybody is after.
Yeah, you have to go get it.
Like in the original Star Wars, the Death Star plans are the MacGuffin.
And you can almost swap it out for something else, and the story itself doesn't change because the whole idea is you're going after the thing. It's called a MacGuffin.
In The Lord of the Rings, the One Ring is the MacGuffin.
So the simple answer would be like the treasure in the dwarven whatever, like in the mountain.
Well, I think there is a right answer, but I also think there are multiple things that are MacGuffins. I think the MacGuffin is the Arkenstone.
Yeah.
But you could also say the mountain itself, the treasure in the mountain. You could say the ring, even though the ring itself isn't really.
I don't feel like that one's completely true. Because I mean, the ring's just kind of there.
I think that the ring is true when you look at the series as a whole.
Yeah.
But as an individual novel, I really think the Arkenstone or the mountain itself, because it's about. Me and Ryan have talked about this, how Tolkien usually doesn't do symbolism, he does applicability, because he wants his stories to be always something that anyone from any generation, from any background could read. And if like the One Ring is specifically symbolic of nuclear power, well then if you have like a new issue, then it's not relevant anymore. It's just corruption. It's the idea of that. And this is, at least to me, it's like the idea of trying to reclaim your heritage. Your birthrights.
The Lord of the Rings was published in the 50s, and every literary critic that ever there was said this was an allegory for World War II, and Tolkien famously did not like allegory. He's like, no, it's a story about an evil ring.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, you can make it into an allegory for World War II, and that's fine.
You can get what you need out of the books, but
that's
where applicability, at least to Tolkien, was superior to symbolism, because you could pull it out of that if that's what you needed.
Yeah.
I feel like that makes it more like just. No, I'm trying to think of the word.
It's more accessible.
It makes it. Accessibility is the simplest way to think.
More timeless.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's a tale that defies generation.
Yeah.
Because everything in the book means nothing, but it also can mean anything.
Yeah.
And that's what his goal was. And he's one of the few writers that's extremely good at this.
And so let's go to themes, and I'm going to talk about the first thing, and this is what I take from it. Now, maybe this was part of Tolkien's intention. It probably wasn't. But this is what I always take from this story, be it the novel, the animated movie, the live-action trilogy. The thing that I always take from this story is it's about a dude who's got this happy, content life, but he's got like this itch for something more that he can't really scratch, but he doesn't even know it until adventure shows up on his doorstep. And it's all about taking that one step outside your comfort zone and then just going off on this crazy adventure. And I am very happy and content in my life, and I would never choose anything other than being in this house with my kids. But you have these daydreams like, what if tomorrow I just went off and joined the Peace Corps, or what if I just got on a plane and flew to Ukraine and just joined the defense force against Russia.
I'm gonna show up to Ryan's house someday with like some BS adventure and take him with me.
Yeah, like what if I just fucking went off and tried to find Atlantis?
Hey Ryan, let's go ghost hunting.
Yeah. like that's always been like the theme and the thing that like attracts me to it, and also that Bilbo becomes who he's really meant to be because of this. Not that he was a bad guy before, but he becomes like,
I don't know, he's kind of a bad hobbit now.
Us going to conventions makes so much more sense now.
He's not proper.
Guys, adventure.
Yeah. Adventure.
Guys, adventure.
I'm late for an adventure.
As soon as Ryan's back is healed, we'll take him on a convention to scratch the itch.
So, I have a lot of notes for themes, and we'll talk about all or most of that stuff. But what do you guys take from it, or do you?
I think that's a good one because there's even a point in the book where he's sitting there and he's listening to them singing songs, and he's just like, man, I really want to go there.
Yeah. It's during the party
at his house.
Yeah.
And I also think one of the things I pulled from it was people being so hell-bent on reclaiming what they view as theirs that it ends up getting them killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big theme in this book.
So, reading this, I had like a big Ryan, you're so stupid moment. You may or may not remember because you have goldfish brain.
I do have goldfish brain.
I think he was talking to me.
No, I was actually talking to him.
Okay.
I have hyper-specific memories for certain topics, and that's it.
When we did on our episode on the Haunted Mask, I asked you, Daniel, is there a better children's novel about revenge? And we both couldn't think of one. Well, here's one.
There we go.
Because revenge is a major theme.
Revenge is a major thing.
I don't have a lot.
I guess the Haunted Mask is number 2 under the Hobbit.
Sorry, R.L. Stein.
I read this book at very surface level. As I've said, I'm not a real deep reader, and
that's the good thing is it can also just be surface level.
But
it can be surface level on your first read, and then you can get deeper and deeper into it if you want.
That's the thing too. Like again, there's all these little like I mentioned earlier. There's little like they're not even really tangents. They're just more like brief mentions of things as just words that were unfamiliar to you or me, and just being like what is that about?
They are old swords, very old swords of the high elves of the West.
Yeah.
They were made in Gondolin for the Goblin Wars. They must have come from a dragon's horde or goblin plunder, for dragons and goblins destroyed that city many ages ago.
It's Dark Souls. I'm reading the item description.
Yeah, there's
That's where you get the lore.
By the way, Tolkien's words are in red.
No. But yeah, no.
Those are important.
But that's also kind of the beauty of reading this book from my perspective, because again, light, simple, first time reading, going through it, like I was picking up on all these things, just being like, oh, so everything was like a little mini, like, a little pondering that would like go off in there. So in a weird way, as an adult, it did kind of enchant me, I guess, in a way. It was just like these little wonder pieces of being just like, man, I wonder what that's about. Just like little curiosities. And I think that's, as far as like the actual like themes of the book or anything like that, I mean, the what I took from it really is just, this is somebody who's taken out of their comfort zone, and to me, it's a story of being able to overcome who you thought you were. That's how I took it. That's the story I read.
Yeah.
I just had the world's dumbest thought. Books written by Bilbo Baggins, right?
Bilbo.
Okay.
Bilbo.
So I'm sitting here thinking, like, Dante's Inferno was written by a dude who just wanted to put everyone he didn't like in hell. Mm-hmm. So now Bilbo's like, these dwarves were dicks. They ate all my food and were super rude.
He only kills 3 of them.
Yeah.
He would have killed more.
But it just, because that was something I was going to bring up, is like, these dwarves are so mean to him throughout the entire book, but now that I'm sitting here thinking, going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What we didn't know was, because it was translated from Tolkien, was that Thorin was actually just Bilbo's roommate for 35 years, and he was just fucking tired of it.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. So some other themes, like taking Tolkien's life into thought, like he was born in the late 1800s. He lived in a British colony in South Africa. He lived during the height of not only British but European colonialism, and there are a lot of race is a major theme throughout these books, because Tolkien characterizes elves in a certain way, and dwarves in a certain way, and hobbits in a certain way. So race is a big topic, but not in the way that if I just told a random person on the street, this book is about race, not that they would probably think that I'm talking about, but even more so like family reputations, which is a very British thing. Like, oh, you're of the London Ducanberries. Well, then I am already making all these judgments of you. And as us as Americans, it's kind of a being known for what your family did is a harder thing to swallow, because in America, we tend to value the individual and their accomplishments, but like historically, and obviously it's changed some, but historically in Great Britain, like your surname is what mattered, your family is what mattered, who your father is what mattered. And Tolkien goes in the first chapter into this big explanation of Bilbo and the two sides of his family. His father was a Baggins and his mother was a Took, and he explains what the people of the Shire think of the Bagginses and what they think of the Tooks.
The Tooks are trouble.
The Tooks are trouble. It's so much to the point that like he almost has like two sides of him. The Baggins side, who wants to stay in the Shire and have his breakfast and smoke his pipe and be happy.
Drink some tea.
And the Took side that wants to go on an adventure.
Cut off a goblin head.
Yeah. And that continues through The Hobbit and all of the Lord of the Rings, like this idea, this very British idea of that it's your family and your dynasty and your legacy that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The elves were a lot goofier than I expected they would be. Because, like, I don't even know if they were elves, but, like, when they'd go in the woods and they'd be singing constantly.
Yeah, it is kind of strange because in a lot of the adaptations, they're very often portrayed as these, like, very mythical, soft-spoken, sometimes angelic thing. And then there's just this scene, hey, we're drunk in the basement right now.
Okay, so I will say that's because of Peter Jackson, and I love the original film trilogy, but I do have issues with it. One of the issues I have is that music and songs are very important to these books. And if you've read The Hobbit, there's like 12 songs.
Oh, several
throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the
Goblin Town's the best.
And the same is true of the Lord of the Rings. There are songs throughout the whole thing, and Peter Jackson used none of them. And he just kind of took out that whole aspect of it. The elves, like, part of what they're known for is they're lovers of lore, and they like to communicate their lore through songs and poetry. So that's part of what they're known for in the books. And they can still be serious and great warriors and still be the badass Legolas, but they can
wear a crown of
But they still can also make chocolate chip cookies and sip them tea.
and drink a shit ton of wine.
Mm-hmm. That characterization that you guys are expressing is very heavily influenced by the Peter Jackson movies, for sure. And that's part of one of the things that I do prefer about his Hobbit movies is that he kind of pulled back on that and started using the songs. And he incorporates a lot more of the songs into the Hobbit trilogy than he did in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Part of that may be because of the animated movie, and he's like, well, I have to have the songs or people will be pissed. But
they're coming to get you, Barbara.
Bilbo. Talk about Bilbo. He's the bravest little hobbit of them all.
He's not a dry sandy hole. He's
it's a comfortable hole.
He's a comfortable hole. Yeah. Bilbo was fun. Like, 'cause there were so many times where like he is. It's it's one of those things I've yelled about forever. Like, I'm always more of a character guy. To me, this is not a character-driven book. Like, there's very few characters in this book to me that I feel like are really amplified. But it's also not that kind of book to me. Like, it's just like, it's about the adventure. It's about the thing. But there were just so many times where like when Bilbo would just be in these situations and like he'd just sit there and be like, I just want breakfast at my house.
Bacon and eggs.
And I'm sitting there just being like, bro, I feel you. Like, Bilbo is such a relatable little dude, and like, but every single time like he'd get in these situations and you just like, but he'd always overcome them, and you're just like, fuck yeah, man. Like, it was so great.
I like how he turns into like a little mini diplomat every time he gets frustrated. Now, excuse me, sir. And he starts having these like little mini arguments where he has a back and forth with himself to avoid the person jumping in.
Like it's slick, and he's just slick enough. That's what's fun too, because like the book also like does a real good job of like showing that he's just kind of a dude doing his best, but he's just a little bit clever, not super clever, just enough to be, and I think that's really endearing. I like Bilbo's character. Like he was a good protagonist to follow.
Yeah, he's very important to me. He might be like my favorite character. He might be like my favorite character. Period. He's probably one of, if not the character that I like identify with most or idolize most. Not only because of his actions in this story, but just because of the frame narrative and the fact that he goes on to become a lore master. And I'm not a writer, but I do consider myself like a lover of lore, and I like to go off on lore tangents. And let me tell you this story. We're going on a hike in the woods, kids, and today I'm going to tell you about the different houses of the dwarves. No, Dad, no, you're not. And,
I love the idea, because in my head that's exactly what you do.
Oh, I can hear his kids' voices.
Do you see that rock? It reminds me of the mountain the dwarves were in. Let me tell you of the dwarves.
Apparently, so the first time I went to the ER after my back injury, they gave me a lot of drugs, and I got very high. And apparently I went off on some rant about the different houses of the elves. And that's what I was told.
Oh my god, that's fucking great.
Even your id is in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Let me tell you of the House of Elves. Which is your favorite House of Elves?
This Nandor.
Okay.
But I mean, the Noldor are extremely important. The story couldn't be what it is without the Noldor. I like the Wood Elves. Okay. All right. And then Gandalf, Mithrandir, the Grey Pilgrim, Olorin.
I wanted more from him, and I got nothing.
But that's what's important.
He's the god in disguise. That's his job in the mythos.
He's a lesser god.
Yeah, but I mean that's the inspiration comes.
He was the one point of contention I think I had with this book.
Wow, there's about
no. Him being there every single time, it was just convenient to be there. Bothering the shit out of me.
He's the god that shows.
But it bugs me that that's just what he does.
Again, this is when I really love mythology now. So every time that stuff happens, I was like, that's the part.
That's his job.
It's just to show up.
One of my favorite parts in this book is like he's like hanging out with Bilbo, and Bilbo's like trying to like very politely tell him to go fuck off, and Gandalf's like bet, and then like marks his door. It's like, haha.
I think the thing is when they're in the goblin caves, and he just magically shows up in the caves with like the lightning and shit, or whatever like that, and I'm just sitting there just being like, whatever. I'm waiting for this big like, Bilbo being real like a little deviant, or like even being some dwarf action coming in. It's just like, nah, Gandalf was lightning. Shit.
Well, at least he dies in the sequel. Spoilers.
So, Gandalf was there to keep Bilbo and the dwarves alive until bless you.
Yeah.
Until Bilbo came into himself enough to start overcoming these things. And the Goblin Caves is too early in the story.
Yeah, he's the handicap until then.
Yeah. And his, like...
Better not have found any cheat rings.
Outside of the story of The Hobbit, which you find out more of in the appendices of The Lord of the Rings and in the Silmarillion, Gandalf's job is he and the other four Ishtari, the five wizards, were sent to Middle-earth from the Valar, who are like the lesser gods of Arda, of Middle-earth. They were sent to Middle-earth to combat Sauron, with the condition they could not match him power for power. They could use their power to help get people out of situations and assist, but they couldn't just go up to Sauron, knock on his door, and just like take him out.
Zap him.
Yeah, they were sent to help the Free Peoples, the men, the elves, the dwarves, in their battle against Sauron. But that's why he does what he does. That's why he shows up when otherwise they would have fucking died. Because the Goblin King would have just killed Thorin and all of the others. So Gandalf had to be there to save them.
Yep.
I did not expect to get pushback on Gandalf. But that's okay.
No,
that's all right.
I just, again, simple reader, doesn't know past the book. It was just, I mean, that's just how I felt.
That's fine.
I don't really have that's just, like, stuff like that bothers me. And it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, still enjoy the ride, though.
Yeah. Okay. Daniel, tell us why dwarves are dicks, and start with Thorin Oakenshield.
Well, okay, so let's talk about mythology some more.
Before you say that, I just want to make it a point in saying Oakenshield might be the fucking coolest name
It's
I've
a
ever
great
heard.
name. A guest shows up to your house, you have to treat them well. And if you don't, you die. That's mythology 101.
Yep.
So these dwarves show up and they take everything. And you know they're dicks. Even in mythology, you know they're dicks, but you still have to put up with it because that's just part of the story. And I'm sitting there going, oh my god, if this was today, you'd be calling the police. But because he's living in a modern mythos, he's like, I have to treat my guests right. And they're just taking like all the stores of food because they're these, at least compared to a Hobbit, they're these big ass dwarves going, alright. And then they start singing about how he's being picky.
They also, at that point, and you probably wouldn't get this on the first read, they know that Bilbo's about to leave on a journey, so they're helping him use up a lot of his food that would have otherwise gone bad.
They just assume that he's the guy because Gandalf marked his door because Gandalf said bet.
Yeah, he is the guy.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, this is the dude we're hiring. The door was marked. Of course this is where we're staying and eating all the food.
Did you guys notice any similarities between the dwarves showing up at Bag End and how Gandalf introduces the dwarves to Beorn?
Yeah.
Does the exact same thing to Beorn that he did to Bilbo. Because if Gandalf would have knocked on Bilbo's door with 13 dwarves, he may have actually just said,
shut the door.
Yeah. But instead, he's like, all right, Balin, you go. We'll wait a few minutes. Dwalin, you go. All right, now Keely and Feely, Bomber, you're last because you're fat enough for two.
Out of all the dwarves, Thorin definitely has like the most character to him. Because you get to see that little spike in where he's like trying to reclaim his homeland, and then he wants the Arkenstone, and he's becoming obsessed with the treasure. Though I am gonna defend him for like half a second here. If I had just reclaimed my homeland and then a bunch of dudes showed up with weapons at my doorstep saying, hey, where's our share? I also would have said, you guys need to get the fuck off my porch. Because I'm saying that, like, how did they think that would look? Of course the dwarves are going to be like, no.
Well, they thought the dwarves were dead.
Yeah, but then they still showed up and they stayed with their weapons. He's like, put your weapons down and we'll talk to you. All they had to do was put their weapons down, and he said he talked to them.
Right. They did. Like the second time they come, Bard leaves all of their weapons on the far side of the river when he goes up to the gates, and Thorin still says no.
Yeah, because that's where the obsession starts taking hold.
Yeah. Generally speaking, in the Legendarium, all dwarves are dicks. There are ones who are less dicks. Like Gimli is kind of the exception. But even at the beginning of the Lord of the Rings, he's kind of a douche to everybody, and that changes throughout the story.
They're basically little mini dragons.
Yeah, there are little mini dragons. I think the other one that like they have like little characterizations, like Bomber's fat.
Yeah, that's what I was like. There's the fat one. There's the old one. There's the brothers.
Balin he gets a little bit more because he's the oldest of them aside from Thorin. Thorin is the oldest one,
and he kind of likes Bilbo, so that's cool.
Yeah, and he's the only one who goes into the mountain with Bilbo. He doesn't go all the way, but he goes a little bit of the way.
And that's why whenever Bilbo wrote the story, he's like, this guy was kind of not a dick most of the time.
But, yeah. Dwarfs?
Didn't remember any of their names other than Thorin. I knew there were several. They existed, and they got caught by spiders.
They did get caught by spiders.
Which was the one that fell in the river and fell asleep?
Bomber.
Okay, the fat one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. This was another, like I said, characters were not real memorable for me, but I also didn't feel like I needed to pay that much attention on those. Yeah, I didn't have really a big opinion on them.
Okay. What about Smaug?
Smaug was so goofy, but he was like fun goofy. Like because like there are a couple of things he said in there that were genuinely like intimidating, like just that actually like an all-powerful being would be able to say. But the whole time I'm listening to Smaug, like everything he says just sounds exactly like a person who hasn't talked to anybody in 500 years. Like, he's even entertaining Bilbo. Like, to me, he felt like he was the first part of it. He didn't even care that there was somebody. In fact, he was excited somebody was there. He's just saying shit to be, like, not only entertain himself, but also his guest. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what that felt like to me. Like, he was just trying to be entertaining so that he wouldn't be bored for a little bit.
I really identified with Smaug because he likes getting his ass kissed just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, oh yeah, man, feed my ego. Tell me how huge I am. Tell me how dangerous I look.
Yeah.
And he loved it. I was like, he's just like me.
I know it's like...
Daniel, the character.
It's hard to... It's hard to put yourself in this position because you've seen the movies, but was it... Or maybe if you hadn't have seen the movies, do you think it would have been shocking that that he's not like the quote-unquote final boss, that he dies, you know, like 2/3 of the way into it?
I think that's something that kind of... If I would have read this book as like I said before, I read this at a better stage in my life. If I would have read this as a kid, that would have pissed me off. What do you mean the hero doesn't kill the monster? But now I'm like, yeah, you know, so a lot of times in these sorts of stories, like, the monster just kind of dies, like something happens, and then the story keeps going.
If I hadn't like been into a podcast for the last 2 years, that would have bothered me substantially. It doesn't bother me like really at all anymore because I realize that we've read how many Stephen King books that just kind of kept going.
Yeah, Perseus kills Medusa, and the story doesn't stop.
Yeah,
it goes on for like 5 more chapters.
Yeah. Yes, that's not something that bothers me as much anymore. But first time around, if I was much less, I'd be like, "Fucking, why are we still doing this?"
I like that a little birdie told the guy how to shoot him.
The thrush.
Yeah, he's like, hey, why don't you just aim right there? Yeah. I like that animals talk in this.
Yeah. Fucking Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
The commentary in the Hobbit movies, it gets to the part where either it's the thrush or the ravens, and he's talking about why he didn't have them talk in the movies. And he's like, I just thought it was just a little too silly. It was just a step too far.
You know who didn't think it was too silly? The people who made War in the North, because we got talking eagles.
Yeah, we did. You know who didn't think it was silly? J.r.r. Tolkien.
Yeah. The guy whose work you're adapting.
Who basically has made you, you know, the money that you have.
Sorry. That's my tangent on talking animals.
Actually, that was fun to read. That last... The reason it didn't bother me as much is because I didn't actually finish the Hobbit movies. I got through the second one. I never got to the third one. So the rest of that, which I think is literally... Because the second one ends like right before they have their fight with Smaug, right?
Yeah.
It ends with him flying off to the
Lake
town.
It ends with him flying to
Lake
Town.
So
I am fire.
Yeah. So after that, So after that, I knew nothing.
What have we done?
He even hypes himself up like me.
Yeah.
That's what I say right before I do deadlifts.
And then, just like Daniel, he gets shot down right at the beginning of the third movie.
Every time I go right in her DMs with that line, and she's like, blocked.
In Daniel's case, DM means dungeon master.
Yeah, her block is a black arrow.
My heart.
Oh, my thrush.
Battle of Five Armies is super goofy, but is a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was much goofier than I was kind of expecting it would be.
Yeah, it's real goofy. It's like he's like, oh, you remember when Legolas killed that Oliphant in Return of the King, and that was everybody's favorite part? Let's max that up to 20. All right.
He shot how many things at once?
Let's go over these characters, and then instead we'll just be like, hey, what creatures and what stuff from Middle really stood out to you that you really liked? All right. So let's skip him for now. Okay, Bard.
Remind me. I don't remember this one.
Bard.
My name.
Bard the guardsman from Lake Town. He shoots.
Oh.
I didn't watch the third movie. I don't know.
I don't know.
I like in the book it's just like a normal arrow that just has some black on it, and in the movie it's like this giant ass arrow, like monster arrow.
No, I love the Hobbit trilogy, but there are a few things that just bug the absolute shit out of me.
That's one of them for me. I like the idea that it's just an arrow that he likes to keep.
Yeah, he's always retrieved it.
Yeah.
It's his lucky arrow that he always gets back. He didn't get it back this time, but it was fine because he killed a fucking dragon with it. I love that they don't even say his name like the first couple. He's just the grim-faced man.
Oh, that guy. Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, yeah, never mind. He was,
everybody else.
Okay.
Everyone else is like, oh, the Lord of the Silver Fountains is back. The gold is flowing from the mountain. He's like, it's the dragon.
He's like a downer all the time.
he goes to the master of Lake Town and he's like, the dragon is back, or
this guy was great because to me he was basically like he was Scruffy from Futurama. Like he's just like, Scruffy gonna die the way he lived. Here's this arrow. See if you can get it. Just like if Andy Serkis wasn't reading this character, this dude would have 100% had a southern accent and then just been like, yeah.
Luke Evans in the movie kind of has like, it's not a mullet, but it's kind of like a mullet-ish like hair with like this big shaggy mustache. Yeah, kind of like a Dukes of Hazzard kind of look to him.
That's what I picked. Like, because I knew his character was, but like he was just. I mean, I know in the movies they make a lot more out of those people than what we get in the book. So it took me a minute to realize that that's who this dude was. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, okay.
Well, they don't say his name right at first. He's just
right.
He's the grim face.
Yeah, because that was and I couldn't remember his name. So,
but him being in charge of the defenses of Lake Town and the thrush coming down and whispering in his ear, and he's of the descendants of the king of Dale, so he knows the language of the thrushes, just like the royal dwarves from Erebor know the language of the ravens, and just like the thrush tells him the secret that Bilbo found of the one missing scale, and he's like, Black Arrow, I have retrieved you every time. Fuck you, Smaug! It's just like so fucking iconic. I just absolutely love it. And
I like his interactions with Bilbo, especially like when he's bringing him the Arkenstone.
He's like, you're fucking betraying your friends, man. Yeah. It's like, no, I claim it as my 14th share. I claim it against my 14th share of the gold.
I really just don't want anyone else to die, man.
He's just like, war is icky, man.
War's icky.
I love it when Bilbo and the dwarves find out that Smaug is dead. Bilbo's like, it's over, right? I can go home now. The adventure is over. Like, no, man. We still got to fucking battle 5 armies.
How was I supposed to carry this all home?
Yeah. It's like, nobody is like,
I love
we never thought of that until we got to the mountain.
That was fantastic. I laughed so hard whenever that was like, actually, yeah.
How am I supposed to get 1/14 of a mountain of a literal mountain of treasure? Can they write me a check?
And then Gandalf shows up with the sack that can just endlessly put shit into it, because that's how that works.
Hermione's bag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hermione's hobbit hole.
I doubt it's dry. Alright. Beorn?
It was very brave for Tolkien to put a gay character into his first book.
Beorn?
Because he's a bear.
Oh!
I thought this dude had like the fantasy equivalent of Alzheimer's for a good chunk of the first part. He's like, I'm gonna have other people come in. Oh yes, of course. And then
goldfish brain.
Yeah, he's just like, what's two more?
Do you call 4 a company? Surely 3 is more than a couple.
I've had conversations with people in rest homes exactly like this. Like, I'm just like, I thought this dude had Alzheimer's. It was, oh my goodness.
I have conversations like this with patients, and then they threaten to stab me. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Or maybe strangle you.
Yeah.
Like a certain someone strangled their cousin for a certain ring.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Gollum?
I think I like every other way this character has been drawn more than I like the Peter Jackson portrayal.
My favorite is still probably the animated movie, but
I kind of like a little frog man.
But I also love the Peter Jackson.
When I was reading this book, I started looking up, like, I wonder how people used to portray this guy, and then I got into the Tolkien pictures and other people drawing him. I'm like, yeah, he's a little frog dude. Hey, look at this little guy. It's fantastic.
I think Sandy Circus owes me money for car repairs. This was kind of a cool thing because, like, in the movies that I'm just not. Gollum is one of those, like, I'm so for and against Gollum in the entire, like, in all the movies and like whatnot. Like, I'm all right with him in the Two Towers. There's just parts of Return of the King where I'm just like, I hate. Which I realize that's the point. You're supposed to hate him. You're not supposed to, like, but you're also supposed to try to be like, you know, he's torn. He's two people in whatever like that. And then I'm just, I don't know. Gollum is a contentious character for me in those movies, but this I don't have that problem with it because, like, obviously it's a shorter time span, but the biggest thing about it is he seems just more depraved. Like, in the movies, like, he's portrayed as, like, this kind of split personality deal where they, you know, like, I don't even... him being at war with himself is just a little bit much for me. Whereas this, he's not really at war with himself. I know he has the ring, so I know there's a thing. But it's easier to see him as a depraved creature. And yeah, I can appreciate that a little bit more than what I got in the films.
I think when and if you read The Lord of the Rings, you'll like Gollum more in the books than in the movies. Mm-hmm. So the way the 3 Lord of the Rings books are structured is that they're actually 6 books, 2 books in each. Mm. And the Two Towers is book 3 and book 4 of The Lord of the Rings. Book 3 of The Lord of the Rings, so the first half of the Two Towers, is everything with that's not Frodo and Sam and Gollum. It's Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas going to Rohan and the Battle of Helm's Deep and Merry and Pippin with the Ents and all of the Rohan stuff is together from start to finish, book 3 of The Lord of the Rings. And then book 4 of The Lord of the Rings, the second half of the Two Towers, is Sam and Frodo off, them meeting Gollum, blah, 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 blah. That's all done together. It kind of, in the movies, like, the Helm's Deep and the battle at Minas Tirith is, like, so engaging, and then you get thrown back to Frodo and Sam and Gollum walking and arguing, and, like, sometimes it can be aggravating because you want to know what's happening at these giant massive battles, and the movies throw you back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, whereas the books give it to you. Here's one entire story, and then here's the other entire story.
That would probably be for someone like me, that would be way more appealing.
And the Return of the King is the same way. So the first half of Return of the King, book 5 of The Lord of the Rings, is all of Gandalf and taking Pippin and going to Minas Tirith and the battle that starts there, and then Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli going through the Path of the Dead and then showing up there up until the point where they march on the Black Gates. And then book 6, the second half of the Return of the King, is all of the Frodo and Sam and Gollum in the ring. And
that sounds dope.
Yeah, it's I think it's the superior way to tell the story. Obviously, I don't think a movie would have worked.
A movie wouldn't work that way.
No.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
But I think it's the better way to digest it.
I really love the riddle segment.
Yes.
Except I know for a fact I would fucking die.
Yeah, I would absolutely.
I suck at riddles. Like, every time we've done like a riddle thing on this book, or I've had a riddle thing in a different book, I sit there and I'm like, and then I hear the answer. I'm like, oh. I would have died there.
Yeah.
I would have died there.
I
think the only time I might not have died is if I would have panicked and said, "What's in my pocket?" Because that's more of a Daniel response.
Be it Gollum, Train AI, or the Sphinx, I would have died all 3 times.
I would have died.
My riddle game, I was listening to that part, and I'm like, I know the perfect riddle to get him. And much similar to Daniel, it was something from my mind. I just like thought of an episode of Johnny Bravo where he just goes, "Hey Donnie," because it's when it's like Donnie Osmond or something like that shows up, and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Who put the Raz in Razzmatazz?"
So, and similar to...
That's not a riddle, that's a joke.
That would be me.
Similar to Eddie in the Wastelands defeating the train by being nonsensical. One of my favorite moments from recent Marvel Cinematic Universe is Awkwafina in the Shang-Chi movie, where she says, when you get stuck in a corner against some guy that you can't beat, just start yelling Hotel California lyrics at their face. And they'll be so confused you can kick them and run away.
It works. I still haven't seen that movie.
It's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
I have a few issues with it, but it's one of the better ones.
I mean, it can't be Thor: Love and Thunder.
It is The Hobbit compared to Thor: Love and Thunder.
I never get sick of talking shit on Thor: Love and Thunder.
I still haven't watched it a second time. I'm curious, like, if my opinions will change at all, but with readjusted expectations. But it was such a bad time.
If we get some more subscribers, we'll do a live reaction.
No, we won't.
No, we won't.
All right, let's take 5 minutes.
I do like 5 minutes.
Okay, so there are a lot of other characters and creatures, and we could spend another hour going over all the various people and things that Bilbo encounters. But are there any standouts that you guys particularly liked or wanted to discuss?
Well, Ryan, I'm kind of partial to the goblins, so
I will say that when in going with the goblins, I'm just like, hell yeah, I could be a goblin. And then they got to the elves, and I'm like, no, I fucking want to be an elf. These guys seem fun.
Yeah.
I started playing goblins in Modern because of the Goblin Town song and Goblin Slayer. Those were the 2 reasons. Only reasons I started playing goblins in Modern.
Love it. Legacy Goblins is my favorite. It's garbage, but I love it.
Yeah, I play Pox. I can't judge garbage.
I still play goblins a lot in. It used to be historic, but now I play it in timeless.
Timeless, yeah.
And it is timeless.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about casting Muxus and just ruining your opponent's day.
Fantastic.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Thanks, Tolkien.
Thank you, Tolkien.
Yeah. I really like that. I thought the Eagles were very cool. I really like them.
And they talk.
Talking Eagles.
They talk, Peter Jackson.
Okay, so just kind of... I want to hear what your thoughts. So just kind of lightly playing devil's advocate. So you kind of had some issues with Gandalf just showing up and kind of being a deus ex machina.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eagles are.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But they weren't a main character.
Okay.
That didn't bother me as much because it's just like, okay, these are random Eagles. And
random Eagles.
These are random Eagles.
They're America showing up to a war late and taking all the credit.
Yeah. Oh, I'm also kind of in on the meme a bit that there's always the argument, why didn't they fly the Eagles to Mordor? Which I understand the concept of the meme. There's several reasons why that doesn't work.
Yeah, they'd see you coming.
So when the Eagles showed up, it was like an in-book meme for me. And I'm just like, nah, this is fine. This is acceptable.
They just pulled him out of burning trees. That's all.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not like they flew him to the Lonely Mountain and just dropped him off. Okay, so related story. Last night, I watched the Smurfs live-action movie for the first time ever.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Drake wanted to watch it, and I was like, okay. I'll watch anything with Hank Azaria. That's fine.
I'll watch anything with Hank Azaria.
Oh, and I don't know how recently either of you have seen it, but there's this part where Gargamel is in prison in New York City, and he's in his prison cell, and a moth flies in through the window, and he like, "Oh, my little brethren moth, you can help me, you can aid me and free me from this place. Go, bring an army of eagles to free me." And the moth comes back and it brings an army of flies. They swarm him and fly him off in a swarm of flies. It's super disgusting, but it's what Gandalf does. That's how Gandalf is rescued from Orthanc in the Fellowship of the Ring. He gets a moth. Okay.
Yeah, I like the Eagles also make a ton of, like, again, they're, to me, like in Lord of the Rings, they are kind of an outsider's meme.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do just kind of show up randomly whenever, like, times are dire. And I'm just like, no, that's fine, because that's, like, almost a joke to me.
They're very iconic to me, partially because an eagle is what I would stare at when I was being read The Hobbit as a child, which I'll have that cover in the video version.
I just expect you're going to be throwing up random covers throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, I will be. Also, I had a thought. Oh, random Middle-earth eagle thing. You know that you've seen the movies. At the end of The Return of the King, Frodo in the mountain, and he decides to keep the ring, and he gets in a fight with Gollum, and Gollum falls into the Mount Doom with the ring, and Sam and Frodo are rescued from Mount Doom by the
Eagles.
Do you know in the books how many eagles Gandalf sent to Mount Doom to rescue them?
I do know this. I don't remember the number, but I remember the number seemed odd unless you go with...
He sent 3.
He sent 3 because he sent one with the possibility / expectation that Gollum would also be one that they brought back.
Yes.
Yes,
He left the opportunity for Smeagol to be rescued.
to be redeemed. Yeah. Yes, I did know that.
Kind of sad. Okay.
Oh, 100%. But like that was one of those, again, extra facts that I'm just like, when watching it again, like, oh, that is cool. You know,
Smeagol made his choice.
Yeah. Any other characters or creatures? Rock giants, wargs, the bats, spiders.
I also love that they talk.
Oh, yeah. I particularly like them in the animated movie when Bilbo's just throwing Sting around, stabbing him in the eyes, and like, oh, what is this? How is this?
I shall call you Sting.
Sting.
Haha. That's what I named my shrink when I did my stint.
Okay.
I'll kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Let's move on to scary shit. Scary shit. Is this book scary?
No.
Not particularly. I can see maybe a small child not wanting to be eaten alive by spiders and or trolls.
No, but there is one portion of this book that has always been haunting to me ever since I was a kid. And it bothered me slightly in the animated movie, and I thought they did a good job of portraying it in the live action movies, and that's just Mirkwood in general. The hopelessness, the no sunlight, no clean water, no good food to eat.
It's the poison swamp level.
Yeah, it's always just been a freaky idea to me ever since I was a kid.
It has the worst enemy encounters.
And when I was reading it this time, it reminded me of the swamp in The Wind Through the Keyhole that the little boy has to go through, where he meets the swamp people.
It reminds me of the swamp in the Never-Ending Story.
Yeah. Oh no, we don't talk about that.
There's a book
we don't
should
talk.
cover.
Yeah, we should. I've never read the book. I
I
love the movie.
I also love the movie.
Except for that part.
We all know what part.
No, didn't happen.
I saw a planter. I don't know if you've seen this planter on the internet. It's real bad.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
No, I don't, but I can imagine what it is.
Oh, I don't know.
You know what? That would be a great Halloween decoration.
Oh my god.
turn your front yard into, what was it called? The Swamp of Sorrow?
I think.
Okay.
Kiss me, fat boy.
Let's move on to Kiss Me Fat Boy. So I've heard a lot of people say that they don't trust anything that doesn't acknowledge, any piece of media that doesn't acknowledge sex, and for various reasons. But for all, other than the most practical of purposes, Middle Earth is a sexless place.
It's just not what the story's about.
What are your thoughts?
I don't even notice it. The only time I notice it is when people I've taken a vow to not like talk shit on certain communities. But so I'm going to try to be super polite about this. There is a segment, because it's started to show up in my algorithm, of the Lord of the Rings fandom that continuously insists in homoerotic themes, and I'm just like, that's projection.
Yeah.
That's projection. That's not what the story is about. Brotherhood and friendships. It's about a guy who saw his friends die in the front lines of World War One.
We mentioned his group, the Inklings, his literary group that he was in with C.S. Lewis. All of those guys went to World War One, and a lot of them did die.
Yeah. So, and I think that there are just some people who insist that sex. I am just as annoyed by people who want to take sex out of media as people who want to force it into a media where that's not what the author's trying to talk about. So, I think Lord of the Rings works perfectly in its sexless way. It is the H.P. Lovecraft of fantasy in its sexlessness.
I'm going to clip this next time you bring up Zootopia.
Yeah. The fuckable rabbits? That's my meme. Hey, Hef, who's the most fuckable rabbit?
Fran.
It's Jessica Rabbit.
She's only a rabbit name.
I was thinking of Lopenny and them stockings.
Ben gets so mad at me when I say Jessica Rabbit. She's not a rabbit. It's in her name, Ben.
Damn.
No, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, so yeah. I tried to be as polite about that as possible, but I do get kind of annoyed by it. And I get annoyed with it in both directions. So there are some stories where people really want to like have titillation, and then there's subsets that are like, ooh, why can't we cover up the titties? Yeah, and that annoys me just as much as people going, why won't Bilbo kiss Sam or Frodo?
Like
there's that too.
Like we were talking about earlier, if you want, you can read The Lord of the Rings and read it as homoerotic, and that's fine.
Yeah. It's fine if that's what it does for you.
Yeah.
But if there's an insistence that this is a theme,
if you're trying to convince other people that was Professor Tolkien's intent, I think it highly unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll discover his secret journal, and we were wrong the whole time.
Him and C.S. Lewis the whole time.
I'm not going to say that it's not possible.
There's the fan art I want.
Yeah. Oh, I forget. But years ago, I saw a YouTube video of Elijah Wood, and he was on a talk show. I don't remember if it was like Conan or Jay Leno or something, but it was probably Conan. Cause he put, and he's like, "Were you aware of this this fan art of you and Sean Astin that's going around the internet?" And Elijah Wood's like, "What?" And they just put up on the screen like all of these huge like.
Yeah, it's so weird. I like The Hobbit the way it is. I think it would be really distracting if, say, they added a love triangle with an elf and another elf and a dwarf. I just don't. Like, hypothetically speaking, I would be distracted.
It was kind of one of those, another thing about the Hobbit movies that I found a little bit strange was actually because there's the romance they kind of try to kindle between that one elf and then
Tauriel.
Yeah.
That's what I was joking about.
Well, I was just kind of like, why do we need that? I mean, it's fine, but
so
I don't know.
It's a thing that I don't like on paper, but I do like in application.
I also never saw the end of that, so I guess there's that too.
Bad.
Bad. Oh, bad. Oh, God. Fair enough.
Well, you know that Keely and Feely die.
Oh,
you didn't remember which dwarf was which.
I didn't. I 100% forgot about that.
Yeah.
To him, like, there's the fat one, and there's Thor and Oakenshield.
And then all the other ones. Yeah. But see, like, but I liked Aragorn and Arwen, like that being a thing. But that felt more akin to a fairy tale romance. Like, it's above people. It's above men. It's above things. It's like a destined thing. To me, that feels much more. It's less romance and more
It's less sex and more fantasy, idealized romance.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, stuff like that's fine. Like, but like, if you're talking about these things where you're looking for like love triangles or homoeroticism, I just think
that if somebody added a scene where the dwarves started butt fucking in the middle of the story, it would be super distracting.
And it would have been in the Mirkwoods.
Well, what happens in Mirkwood stays in Mirkwood.
They're hungry and they have to get protein from somewhere.
Yes.
So I'm gonna eat an ass.
Yeah.
I'm about to put the wood in Mirkwood. I'll
should
be murking these dwarves left and right.
We really missed our calling as porno parodious.
No, what we missed was the point of our original question, because now all we're doing is sexualizing the dwarves.
Yeah.
And just in like quick defense, I don't argue with people over not liking Tauriel and the maybe I would about Tauriel herself, but not. I wouldn't argue with somebody who didn't like her relationship with Keeley. And I don't on paper. I think that's just a great example of studio interference, just being like,
the female audience.
That doesn't bother me. Like, adding a female character doesn't bother me. Adding a romantic subplot on paper, I don't like. But in application, like in the actual movie, I do like it. It feels like a very Tolkien relationship to me, because interracial relationships, typically between men and elves, is something that comes up 3 times throughout the Legendarium. So,
well, that's hot. Dwarves are gross.
Not Keeley though; he's hot. Quickly about Tauriel, is like, from our perspective, I can see what you're saying. So, a few years ago, Drake had like a 2-week stint when he was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was during COVID, and at that point only one parent could stay with him at a time, and it always had to be back. Like, she would almost never let me like trade her out. Like, she had to be with him like 20 out of 24 hours. So I spent a lot of time at home with Emma.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did was we watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then we watched the Hobbit trilogy. And she was 10-ish at the time, and I kind of got to rewatch it through her eyes, and she's like, I like this. This feels like, because she's a big fantasy person. She's like, I feel like I'm supposed to like this. I really do, but I don't see me in this anywhere. There's no, where are the women? Where can I see myself in this story? And like, Tauriel's like the closest there is. So I don't object to her presence in those movies, because I want little girls to like these stories too. And if seeing that movie and seeing that one elven woman gets them to pick up the book and read the actual book, like she did. Emma read The Hobbit after seeing those movies. Like, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. Like, that's not what would weird me out about it. I mean, weirded out's even not the right word. It just felt a little strange in that movie versus the other one, where it's just like, yes, romance is there, but I feel like the story itself is kind of the romance.
Well, and that's the difference in like the Arwen and Aragorn's story was written by Tolkien,
mm-hmm.
and Tauriel and Keeley's story was not.
It was written by Peter Jackson trying to write a Tolkien story.
Peter Jackson does make huge changes to Arwen and Aragorn's story. So
I'm sure.
That's a whole nother discussion.
I'm still not over. Once I found out that the Eagles were supposed to talk, I haven't been able to like get over it. Like, I didn't know that when I first watched the movies, and ever since then I'm like, why would you change it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking Eagles are sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
That alone was...
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
The power of Christ compels you. People are looking for the Christ in Christmas, but Daniel, can you tell us where the Christ is in Tolkien?
Probably in the wardrobe.
That's a lie. That's Aslan.
It is not nearly as clear in Tolkien as it is in C.S. Lewis. But I do think that you probably got some...
Or at least, where do you see his Catholicism shining through?
Well, okay, I see his Catholicism is mostly when I hear you talking about the mythology as a whole. Because you have stuff like Morgoth. That's the guy's name, right?
That's the first Dark Lord.
The first Dark Lord and his fall with the other not angel things. I can't remember the names of these things. But when you describe these things, I'm like, okay, he's telling me about Dante's Inferno right now, is what I hear.
So Tolkien's mythology is both monotheistic and polytheistic.
Yeah, at the same time.
There is one God, and he is the creator of everything, and that's Eru Ilúvatar. He created everything, but not in the same way as like the Christian God did, where he literally molded everything. In Tolkien's Legendarium, Eru Ilúvatar created the Valar, who are like the lesser gods, and they're very easily equated to like the Greek gods or the Roman gods.
Yeah. It's Gnosticism.
But he created them and then gave them the inspiration to mold the world.
Yeah, we're going to make some stuff.
Yeah.
So I see it a lot in that. This, and the Hobbit itself, it's a little bit harder because the thing that I see the most religion-wise is Norse mythology. That's the big one, is the disguised god that shows up to solve the problems just so people continue on what they're supposed to be doing as Odin.
And Gandalf is one of these beings that Eru Ilúvatar created, but even within them, there's a subsection.
Yeah.
So there's the Valar, which you could. It's hard to equate. So if we're talking like Christian terms, like the Valar would probably be like the higher angels, and then the Maiar are the lower angels. That's the group that Gandalf and the other wizards and Sauron all belong to. If you're talking like Greek, like the Valar would be like Zeus and his brothers and sisters and their children, and then the lower ones would maybe be like demigods. But there's one God who created everything, in that he created a group of higher gods and lesser gods, or lesser gods and angels, or however you want to think about it. He created the Valar and then the Maiar, which they're all immortal, but the Maiar are less powerful than the Valar.
Yeah. Then you got like very distinct light and dark themes, which is and I'm sure there are people that will disagree with me on this, but in Christian mythology, good and evil are super binary.
Mm-hmm.
It's one or the other. If you're in the gray zone, you're in the black zone. Technically, everybody's always in the gray zone, and it's about trying to get as close to white as. But now I'm being an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of good and evil is very binary. Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, there's some very clear. This weapon literally shines light to kill the evil things.
The theme of light versus dark is metaphorical and literal.
Yeah.
The elvish weapons glowing when orcs are near is one example I was going to give. An example from the other side of it is the orcs, or the goblins, cannot exist in sunlight. When they show up at the Battle of the Five Armies, they literally have an army of bats to block out the sun so that they can participate.
It literally cannot be in the sun. It's very... These are the evil things. Here are the not so evil things.
But you also do have shades of gray looking at the dwarves.
Yeah.
Like Thorin. He's one of the good guys. But
people are corruptible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you start falling towards black.
And then,
but so if I had to make like a where's the Christ in that, in a very literal sense, it's the light and dark themes.
And just a real quick example from the Silmarillion for people who may not ever read the Silmarillion, the way on our planet we get light from the sun during the day and the moon at night.
Yeah.
When Arda, which is what the planet Earth is called within the Tolkien Legendarium, was created. Arda. The world itself is not Middle Earth. Middle Earth is actually a continent on Arda.
It's the best continent. Yeah.
The original source, when the world was created, it was dark. There was no light.
Yeah.
And the light source came from two trees. A tree that would shine light during the day, and a tree that would shine light during the night. And that began the first age of Middle Earth, which wasn't proper or noun the first age, but the years of the trees, which was lowercase the first age of Middle Earth. And the years of the trees ends when Morgoth, the first Dark Lord of Middle Earth, penetrates the realm of the Valar with a giant spider god and destroys these two trees, literally taking the light away and plunging the earth in darkness.
He's like, hey, Pennywise, I need a favor.
Yeah. Okay.
Spiders.
I don't have a lot to add to any of that.
That's fine.
Actually, before we move to the next thing, I have a question for you, because I was wondering this during the book. In the book, Bilbo puts on the ring several times.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it not affect him the same way it affects Frodo?
There's no explicit answer to this.
No shit.
So, the rings and how they work, there's no specific rules. And I meant to bring this up under themes. And there's a term, and I don't remember the term. So let me just go over this quickly, and then I'll try to answer your question. So you can have different kinds of magic in literature, in media, and you could take The Lord of the Rings as one example, and Harry Potter as the other example. In Harry Potter, to use magic, you are born as a wizard, you pick up a wand, and you say the spell, and the spell happens. But in Tolkien, nothing is that simple, nothing is that well explained, nothing is that explicit. Gandalf's spells happen when they happen, and the effects are... things happen. And magic is very specifically underused, and magic itself is really a Deus Ex Machina, because Gandalf only uses his magic when there's no other way out. And the end universe explanation for that is that he was told he cannot use his full power. He only does it when he has to keep them from not dying. But, in Harry Potter, they literally use it for everything. They use it to wash the fucking dishes. Like, I pointed, Aloha Mora, there's a light, or whatever the spell is to unlock a door. They use it for everything. But if you've only seen the movies, like, think through the three movies, and like, how often do you see Gandalf use a spell? And can you explain exactly what the spell was or what it did? So the magic within the Lord of the Rings is very vague and underused, which I think, like, I love Harry Potter, and it's two different things, and they're both good in their own ways. But I really like this because I think it kind of fuels your imagination better. And I'm sure millions of people don't listen to this podcast.
but they should.
That's the magic.
Okay, so the way the rings work...
You realize it's going to be our highest episode, right?
I doubt it.
I don't.
I don't know. The Haunted Mask 2 is doing numbers.
Yeah, it is. You know what our highest one is?
What?
Leon the Professional. And our second highest one... Our second highest one is the Rob Lowe Salem's Lot.
That seems very strange.
Yeah, well, I'll pull them up and we'll get updated numbers.
Okay.
Here. Okay, so...
Anyway.
He never explicitly says how the rings work or what they do. A common fan interpretation for why the rings make hobbits invisible is that the rings accentuate existing characteristics.
I didn't even put it together that only the hobbits have used rings. That didn't occur to me.
Within
the book,
The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, yes. In expanded stories, other people have used ring. Well, technically, you do see Galadriel use her ring in the Lord of the Rings, but that's very subtle.
Sure.
Okay, subtle is a very good word for the use of magic. So, hobbits are naturally stealthy people.
They don't want to be seen.
They don't want to be seen. Tolkien or Bilbo explicitly says that at the beginning. That's why Gandalf wants a hobbit for this quest, because Smaug will not recognize the smell of a hobbit and it will confuse him, and two, because he wants somebody who can stealthily sneak into the mountain, find the Arkenstone, and come back to unite the dwarves and then march on Hobbit. So when Bilbo or Frodo or Sam puts on the ring, they become invisible because that's a natural extinction of a characteristic they already have. So when dwarves use the rings, Sauron created those rings to try and subdue the dwarf kings the same way he does with the Nazgul, the 9 kings of men. But it doesn't work because dwarves are naturally sturdy and resistant. All the rings do to them is make them greedier than they would have already have been. So the biggest, and that's what fans interpret is why the dwarves of Moria ended up digging too deeply and waking up the Balrog and ended up destroying the realm of Khazad-dûm, which we call Moria, is because Sauron gave one of the 7 rings to Durin III, who was king of Moria or Khazad-dûm at that time, and he eventually, over the years, they just kept digging deeper and deeper and getting greedier and greedier because of that ring, which brought their downfall. So, as to why it doesn't affect Bilbo the same way it affects Frodo, there's not an explicit answer. My personal explanation of this is because the One Ring itself is tied directly to Sauron and his power. At the time of the Quest of Erebor, Sauron was still recovering his power from the last time he was defeated. At the time of the War of the Ring and Frodo's quest, and at the time of the Fellowship, he's basically recovered and he's at the height of his power, which is why and he has a stronger connection to the ring. So when Frodo uses it, he ends up, instead of just becoming invisible and being able to fuck off and do whatever he wants the way Bilbo does, he's also tied to the other world, and he sees the Nazgul as they really are because Sauron's influence is stronger at that time.
Makes sense.
Now, you could probably find a better answer from a legitimate Tolkien scholar.
But we have one right here.
No, because you can actually get a degree in Tolkien studies. And
I know what I'm doing my Kickstarter for. Ryan's next degree.
Yeah.
But could you imagine the beautiful parchment that they have to put it on?
I'm sure he's looked at them.
I bet it comes to you in Elvish.
Do I still have it bookmarked?
Yes. Is this one of those, like, you have to, like...
I still have it.
I want to see the syllabus for this. Signum University.
Where's the talk about?
Are there, like, levels, or is it just, like, one degree? What?
I haven't looked at this in a while because I just don't have time or money for any of this.
How much does this cost? Like, did you look at the price at the time?
Yeah, but this was like literal like years ago.
What?
We're gonna see the price and we're gonna be like, oh, that's not so bad.
We can make this happen.
He'll get his degree in this. I'll get mine in clown studies.
Clown studies?
Yeah, I want to be the next Joker.
Oh.
Academic catalog.
No. I had to think about that for a minute. No.
Here it goes. Concentrations, Tolkien studies.
Whoa. Okay, is this so this isn't just... This is not just Tolkien stuff? This is other things you can get degrees?
No, this is a university, and they offer... you can get a degree in literature and language, and when you're a graduate student, you choose a concentration, like you choose a field to focus on. Like if it was history, I was like, okay, I'm going to study the Civil War. And getting an English degree, okay, I'm going to study Tolkien.
Huh.
And it's a course that they offer, and you can get your graduates.
What can you do with this degree? You can talk about Tolkien.
You can have a podcast.
You can teach at their university, maybe.
This is Gondolin, by the way.
This is a city?
Yeah.
We should go there.
It's been destroyed. It was destroyed by Morgoth and his dragons and his Balrogs and
damn Morgoth.
Yeah. And that's the Eorl, the Dark Elf, being cast off the walls.
You're talking about sexualizing something.
Now, why did they have to cast off a Dark Elf?
Yeah.
Because he betrayed the hidden city of Gondolin to Morgoth. He told them where it was.
I mean, really, how hard could they be to find? Look how wide it is.
It's encircled by a mountain range. This is a valley within a circular mountain range, and the only way to get to it is a tunnel that goes underground under the mountain range with a hidden entrance, or via eagles. And that's how the first men get to Gondolin, is eagles take them there.
Okay.
All right.
Why didn't they just take the eagles? God damn it.
Oh my God, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
All right, Kings and Koontz, what is your king? Or
my king is the absolute delight I just got out of the book. Like, it just did. I've learned that, like, I'm not gonna say entry level fantasy, but like this feels like if you're wanting to get into fantasy for the first time, this feels like a great place to start.
This would be probably the book I would recommend, unless you just really think you need to start with something that's more modern. Then I would probably honestly recommend The Eyes of the Dragon or The Wind Through the Keyhole, something in that realm.
Conan the Barbarian.
Or unless you want to start in the YA range, if you're a younger reader, then starting with something like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson or whatever. Daniel, what is your king?
Okay, this is a very hyper specific king. Because for like the majority of the story, I was sitting there going, they better not forget that troll treasure. And at the end of the book, they didn't forget. They went back for it, baby.
Because he couldn't take all that gold, but he's still he's like in the Lord of the Rings. He's rich. Like he's already rich to begin with.
Yeah, he was well to do.
Yeah. What's the term for like a kid who just has like a bank account from their parents?
A trust fund.
Yeah, Bilbo's a trust fund baby.
Yeah.
That's what he is.
But I spent so much of this book going, if they forget that fucking troll treasure, I am gonna have an aneurysm. And then they didn't forget it. And then it was so funny because he actually needed it because everyone thought he was dead.
And they sold all his shit.
So it all circled back, baby.
Yeah.
Ryan, what is your king?
Aragorn, son of Arathorn. King Elisar, bitch.
Bait, hook, switch.
I don't know.
No, don't change your answer. That was perfect.
All right, that's my answer.
Yeah.
You're not even in this book. Shut up.
Shut up.
Okay, the King of Dale then. Whatever.
Koontz.
Koontz. The $150 tow bill I got from Andy Serkis reading his Gollum.
Wow.
No, I thought it was for sure it was going to be Gandalf.
No, I can at least forgive Gandalf. I will not forgive being freaked the fuck out and driving into a ditch.
My precious.
Hold on, we're not there yet.
There's that little fucking red car too. That was real hard to get out of there.
Do you know your Koontz?
I just lost track of which dwarves were which very often. So I think that even like a little bit more characterization might have helped me a little bit. Like I could remember Mary and Poppins. And the fat one. And the old one. And then Thor Oakenshield.
You mean Keely and Feely?
Yeah.
You mean Merry and Pippin, but you actually mean Keely and Feely.
Yeah, that's how little I remember them. these characters.
Mary and Poppins is pretty good.
Well, Mary and Poppins wasn't even in this book.
Yeah.
But a spoonful of sugar was.
Helps the medicine.
That's how little I remember some of these dwarves.
Well, I mean, for the purpose of the story, there's Thorin, and then there's the dwarves.
There's the company.
Yeah, they're. I do like.
But he would keep mentioning them by name, and I'm like, I don't know which one that is.
I do like the way that the live action movies characterize them better.
Yeah.
And make them a little more distinguished. But...
That is something I will give them. Like when I was watching them, I knew which one was which.
Mm-hmm.
But because he would like say this happened to this dwarf, and I'm like, was that the fat one? Say the fat one.
Bomber.
Yeah. And I couldn't keep them because there's like 13 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of names to keep track of if they're not being made super distinct all the time.
And that's how Gandalf convinced them to add a Hobbit to the company so that they wouldn't go with 13 dwarves, because that's not a lucky number.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That's my Koontz.
Okay. I don't really have one. I mean,
It's perfect.
Yeah. It's not perfect. If I'm getting nitpicky, like every single adaptation changes it so that Bilbo only goes into the mountain one time instead of 3 times.
3's the magic number.
Yeah. That's super nitpicky. I don't know. The one thing that kind of bothers me is there's one point where Bilbo references engines and like a car engine, and that the easy explanation for that is that at the time Tolkien was writing it, he was planning that he was there was a modern day narrator, not Bilbo, so there's no reason not to mention a car engine. But then he came up with the frame narrative, and it makes less sense that Bilbo would be mentioning a car engine. But because the frame narrative, the nature of the frame narrative itself, you could also explain it away and say that, well, that wasn't actually something that Bilbo included in his original draft. It was something that was added by an editor, by some human at some point down the line before it got to Tolkien himself. Or maybe it was a mistranslation on Tolkien's part.
I've read too much Stephen King on this podcast, so when you said engines, I thought you meant like big engine woods. I was like, yeah, we're the Native American.
A motor.
This podcast has destroyed the way I think of language. Thanks, Stephen King.
Okay. Rankings. Hey, it's my number 1. Okay. Daniel.
God, this ain't easy. I think I'm gonna have to put it right below Frankenstein or right above Frankenstein, and that's where I'm struggling right now. I think I'm gonna put it right below Frankenstein, at least until I read The Hobbit again, because I've read Frankenstein like 4 or 5 times at this point.
It does get better with multiple reads.
So
especially after having read The Lord of the Rings and The Silmarillion.
It just pushed Firestarter out of my top 10.
Sorry, Charlie.
I'm a little bit more inclined to horror than Ryan is, so And with fucking Lolita's number one.
Also, like, you don't have the nostalgia factor that I have, yeah.
But I'm still, you know, I went into this, you know, going, you know, it'll be fun to do for Hobbit Day. Ryan's been wanting to do it for a while, but it still managed to crack into my top 10.
Yeah, because
it's good. It's a good book.
It's real good. Have you read The Little Sisters of Eloria? Your mission before our Dark Tower episode, like the Dark Tower, not not a Song of Suzanne.
Yes. All right, it's on the list. Also, no, I didn't read it.
Okay. Roland gets jerked off.
So do I.
That also happens in the Song of Suzanne.
Yeah,
I have not. I have just now started it, so
he gets jerked off in the first chapter.
Yeah.
Oh,
because he makes love to his girlfriend.
Oh.
Well, she rubs him down with.
She rubs him down.
What is it, bobcat oil or whatever they call it? Cougar oil.
I was expecting like you fucking know how King is. I was expecting something way more stupid and ridiculous.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, it's fine. All right, this goes. It goes. I think it goes below Dracula, above the Walls of Kala.
So it's your new number 7.
Yes. Cool. I think that's exactly where that needs to go.
Yeah, everybody's top 10. I'm happy.
Mm.
I
bet you when he came up with this, he was afraid he was going to have to deal with the contrarian Daniel for 2 hours.
Yes, I was, but I was also... I had faith that the quality of the book would shine through, and that it's just hard to deny that it's a good
faith,
book.
Christian mythology, Ryan.
Yeah. I was afraid, and I'm still reeling a little bit, that I've had issues with Gandalf.
I've had my own criticism.
I was afraid to review this because I am very defensive and very nostalgic, and similar to Star Wars, I have ended at least 3 friendships over Star Wars.
It's okay. Once you watch my Superman arguments video, you'll know how to get under my skin.
So I will tell you, my original Koontz, before, stupid, was, and I'm going to do this as a precursor because there is a point to this, so don't hit me. My original Koontz for this book was, it felt unoriginal. However, once the wreck had cleared my head, after reading the book and listening to it and everything like that, I did find the reason I thought at the time it was unoriginal is because so many other things have been pulled because of the influence of it.
Yeah.
All those little tangents and things that he had in there where he'd just tell you all these different things. It makes 100% sense as to why it is as renowned as it is, because so many people probably are like me, where they're just like, I really want to know more about something like that, or I want to have my own vision of that. It's such a, it is a very much centerpiece of what many would consider a fantasy home.
And I did download Lord of the Rings because of this.
It's in my queue. I think
it'll be a minute because I'm trying to get through what we have to get through for the end of the year.
So, and we'll talk about season 4 when we're done here. What you described is me with Blade Runner. I'm watching Blade Runner, and I'm like, I've seen this story 100 times.
It's the opposite effect of what I had with the Hobbit.
Yeah, and I was just like, and I know all of those stories are inspired, or at least most of them are inspired / influenced by Blade Runner.
But if you watch it last,
yeah, I've seen Ghost in the Shell 12 times, and then I try to watch Blade Runner. I'm like, okay, I get it. Okay, all right. Let's try and wrap up. Okay, this is Kings and
Hello, Mr. Stein.
Hello, Mr. Black.
Who's that?
He's the new drama teacher.
I'm not going to go through all these. There are a lot of Silmarillion references, specifically to Gondolin, the Goblin Wars, Elrond's father, Eärendil, Valnor, which is the land of the Valar, and Thingol and the Naglamir and the Helmandos. I had all the quotes written out. I was going to read them all and explain what they all mean, but we're about to hit the 2.5 hour mark, and that's without all the sound clips and the intro music and all that stuff. So let's go. When and if we do Lord of the Rings, that would be 3 episodes, so I can spend more time talking about the Silmarillion references there.
We could also intersperse a pre-show now and again
to talk about some of this stuff. Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Homework. We're having a contest, and it's time for everybody to bust out their best Gollum impersonation.
Okay, who's going first?
Oh, we're gonna rock, paper, scissors. It's on go.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna say Rochambeau, go. Rochambeau. I'm sorry. I screwed it up. On go.
On go.
On go. Rochambeau, go. All right, it's not me.
Rochambeau, go.
You're first.
I'm first.
You're first.
Okay.
And you can say a Gollum line, or you can say something original. It's up to you.
All right.
Precious! Precious! Why have you left us? Wow!
Not bad.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think I can top that. Okay.
You're next.
All right, hold on. Just gotta... Okay.
What does the Hobbit have in its pockets?
Just scream.
Yeah.
It's just like...
And choked myself.
What does it have in its nasty pockets?
Oh, I could do this better if I hadn't been talking for 2 hours.
Fat hobbits.
I can do a better one than that, but that's okay. We just destroyed our voices. All right.
Yes, indeed.
For further reading, if you really like this, I do recommend checking out the annotated version of The Hobbit, which was done by Douglas A. Anderson. And also, if you did the audiobook, definitely recommend checking out illustrated editions of The Hobbit, be it especially ones with Tolkien's illustrations, but also other ones are good too. And of course, reading the further works of the Legendarium of j.r.r. Tolkien. I made myself come up with 3 novels that I should also recommend. The first 2 we've already mentioned, The Eyes of the Dragon and The Wind Through the Keyhole by Stephen King, I think are really good intros into modern fantasy and are something that you would enjoy if you enjoyed The Hobbit. This other one may seem a little bit out of left field, but All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Marie Remarque is a novel, but it's semi-autobiographical. It's an account... It's a first-hand account of World War I from the trenches from a German soldier. But I think that reading this book and finding out what that war was like for the people who are actually in the trenches fighting it helps you understand Tolkien a little better. Because we never even got into this. This is something that I had in the notes under themes, and I ended up going over because we have so much to talk about. But like people who watch the movies, that's the big thing about the movies are these huge battle scenes, these dramatic battles, the Helm's Deep, the Charge of the Rohirrim.
They almost glorify battles.
It essentially glorifies war. And if you guys read The Hobbit, does this book glorify war?
No.
Tolkien literally knocks the main character out so he can stop describing it.
Yeah. and Bilbo, he's there, and he has he does have a vested interest because 1/14 of the gold in that mountain is his, supposedly. Although
willing to give it all up to stop a war.
Yeah, and even once the war is happening, Like, he prefers to find a safe spot and not participate in it.
Yeah, he's the Irish.
Yeah. I do kind of view the hobbits as the Irish of the Middle Earth world, but, you know, that's me projecting my allegories and bullshit. Okay.
We'll all go get some Hobbit tattoos.
No, we won't. Any other recommendations for those who enjoyed The Hobbit?
I don't have any. Like Eyes of the Dragon would have been my recommendation.
I mean, if all you're interested in is like fantasy things, then I could give you a million recommendations. But if you want something that's written like The Hobbit, no. Because, you know, I'm a big fan of The Witcher. I'm a big fan of Moorcock's Elric of Melibene.
You're a fan of Moorcock's?
Yeah.
One is just not enough.
Game of Thrones. But those aren't... They aren't written like The Hobbit, and the worlds don't feel like Middle-earth. So, but if you're interested in, like, if you're just purely interested in swords and sorcery, then yeah, I can give you a million recommendations. If you want something that feels more like a fairy tale, those are like the two that I've read. Is Eyes of the Dragon and this.
Yeah, I agree. And they feel holistically unique, I think.
Yeah.
Too.
I'm sure there are things like them, but I don't have any experience with it. The kind of fantasy that I had been exposing myself to over the years was different. My idea of fantasy before this was like Berserk.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, it's just like I liked like quote unquote dark fantasy.
Yeah,
I'm like, where's the blood and the edginess?
Yeah, you're not like you're
like the actual like fantasy series that I read before this was Conan the Barbarian. And I read that because the guy who wrote that was friends with H.P. Lovecraft, which is the only reason I read them. And my stepdad was.
What do they call that? Masculine fantasy or something?
Yeah.
Power fantasy? Is that?
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to describe it. But it's like if Bilbo went on an adventure on steroids and then just started murdering everyone in his path. Actually, I guess Conan would be more comparable to Thorin because he becomes a king, and that's his quest is to reclaim get a kingdom.
Well,
yeah, but now I'm on a tangent. Sorry.
And I have to say this, or it'll bother the hell out of me.
Oh, Conan is also very. Its magic is much closer to Lord of the Rings, where it's underexplained. It's very powerful, and it can do basically whatever the person needs it to, but it's very mythologized. So my recommendation would be Conan the Barbarian.
The dwarves didn't care about getting the mountain back; they just cared about the gold.
Yeah,
and the Arkenstone.
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, yeah, but that's.
You're right.
That's the symbol.
If I didn't say it, I would explode.
I know. I'm the same way, but with Superman stuff. So.
Okay. All right. Upcoming on the Horror Babylon, I think we have a schedule for the rest of season 3. I'm not saying it couldn't change, but I'm just gonna give it to you. So this Thursday we have a short bonus episode on the Korean animated film Paddock, and then that's October 3rd. And then October 4th, we're doing our live stream with Daniel and I's live reactions to the new Salem's Lot movie.
I should get us beers for that.
And then our next book episode is Sunday, October 6th. We are wrapping up the summer of Goosebumps with Night of the Living Dummy 3. And then the following Sunday, October 13th, we are back on the Dark Tower with The Song of Susanna by Stephen King, and Hef will be here for that. Then our final book of season 3, that episode will release on October 20th. We are reading The Ceremonies by T.E.D. Klein.
I have 5 pages left.
One of the 2 scariest books ever written, according to Stephen King. The other, which we have already reviewed, The Great God Pan. And then on Sunday, October 27th, we are going to de-stress from this stupid election with FDR American Badass.
Yes!
That is where the beers will come.
And then, of course,
also, yes.
Tradition, on October 31st, Halloween, our anniversary episode will drop. This will be our 3-year anniversary. And after that begins season 4, where we are going to do some restructuring of the podcast. We've already released a video to our patrons talking about that a little bit, but we'll give more explanations on that on coming episodes. We're not going anywhere. We're just going to be doing things a little different in season 4, so you still have more of us to look forward to. And people that I look forward to interacting with are our patrons. Thank you to Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron, and Ben, the 4th Patron of Hope, and Mia the 5th, the Rainmaker.
She makes it rain, yo.
Oh, she makes it rain in a wet hole. Like a Hobbit hole. She makes it rain into the hole.
I shouldn't hear that clip.
Alright, whatever.
Daniel likes more cocks.
And thank you to Sierra the 6th, the Keyblade Patron. And thank you to Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall, Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mall Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can shop online at horsemen.tcgplayerpro.com, where you can also now manage your comic subscriptions. And if you make it in the store, say hello to Ronald the Third, Grampus of Christmas. And quickly before we go, I said I would update us on what our most watched episodes are based on views, so I'm going to do that quickly. I have to go through some stuff that is not the Horror of Babylon real quick.
But.
All right, our number 1 most viewed episode on YouTube at 805 views and 2 likes. It's the Leon the Professional. Number 2 is The Great God Pan at 485.
2 likes.
12.
And 2 likes.
12.
I'm sorry, that was comment. Hold on, real quick.
We have 3 dislikes on that one too.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 2 likes and no comments on Leon the Professional. In the Grey God Pan, we have 12 likes and 2 comments. So let's do like the top 5. So that's 1 and 2. Number 3 is Salem's Lot 2004. That is the Rob Lowe one with 500. Oh, that's more than the. Whatever. 487 views. And then the Salem's Lot book episode, 355 views. And then number 5 is Treehouse of Horror of Babylon, Married to the Blob, which is the Blob parody episode where Homer becomes the Blob. 329 views. All right, cool. And then the next one is A Dowry of Blood. There is more in you of good than you know, child of the kindly West. Some courage and some wisdom blended in measure. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. But sad or merry, I must leave it now. Farewell. Stay tuned for our socials. Thank you to our patrons, and stay scary.
Stay scary.
Stay scary, folks.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.
hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or...
That's our intro.
No, I was reading it, and then I was like, oh god.
Daniel's gonna make a comment
about wet holes and dry holes, and then ends of worms being put in them, and then you can eat in them, and I was like, shit.
Yeah. I was being good, but I could see the gears turning in his head.
Okay, I'm gonna read it one more. I'll cut that out, and I'll put it after
I
the
just
song.
heard dry needling in my head over and over and over.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, like some of Daniel's girlfriends. No.